Today's Monday, June 30th. This is the work session for the Pocahontas School Board.
Turn it over to Todd.
Turn over to Todd.
All right. Well, what I did is I have one site plan. I've got these cut out so we can kind of move buildings around and just look at different locations. I figure at this point it's kind of the easiest thing to do. I did draw one scheme up. I'll just tell you this one. So this would be your current parking lot right here. The current school's right in here. And so you could come in and build something right here. Leave kind of this notch out, and this is just one scheme. I mean, this can be done a lot of different ways. You came in and built this, and you got that completed, and you moved the kids in there. Your gym's still standing at the time. Then you come back and you could build a gym in this location before you tear down this gym. And then once that's built, then you could tear down the rest of the high school, the gym, and these two buildings there, leave the rock building, and put a parking lot back there that could be a little closer to your high school. So
It'd be closer to the football field, too.
yeah, the football field.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's one scheme. You could still have deliveries kind of back here, for so your cafeteria kitchen maybe could end up being.
So you would be moved from square footage from the math and science wing to this building.
What I did is I used, and this can fluctuate, but I used 70,000 instead of closer to the PR had 78. And so instead of using 78, which is close to 80, I was just kind of rounding. Instead of using that 78 to 80, I used 70 because there's about 10,000 square feet of the PR that's for PE. And so you can't really build a 10,000 square foot gym, but your gym might be 30,000, but the 10,000 for the PE area in the PR is in that 30,000 square foot number. And this is all of the POR except for that 10,000 square feet in the.
So in that scenario, we'd be losing the street.
Yes, yeah, you would be kind of difficult to connect the two. You probably would have, say,
That could cost an issue.
and this could be a different shape. We kind of, when I met with Dr. Arbuckle and Craig about this, let's say the bus, we could create a bus turnaround here. This building could be a little different shape. You could maybe, go fit over there a little bit more.
But could you create, I know you had talked before about putting a parking lot behind administration. Could that not be connected?
We could still do that. You could possibly connect, reconfigure this part of the parking lot, and maybe we could connect to another parking lot over there.
But that means these kids would have to walk all the way across the parking lot to get to math and science wing.
What we would do, and I didn't want to draw it in here, but this is math and science right here. So let's say you did something like, let's say there was a corridor that, maybe the main entrance, well, you probably wouldn't put that. But let's say there's a corridor there, to kind of used to get kids into the gym, but also it could connect to the science room. Hey, Jeff. It could also connect to the science room. So yeah, and we could even maybe connect to the physical. I haven't really looked at the grades, the elevation differences, but I'm pretty sure that's lower than this.
What was your enrollment number are you working off of on the POR?
It's the state provided number.
I can't remember what it was,
550.
550.
This is the most challenging silverware.
That includes the ninth grade.
Yes. Yep.
Is that what y'all want to do?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, we could possibly, in this scenario, the goal was to end up with something that's close to that science zone. So it doesn't displace kids, but again, there's other ways to do this. This was just one idea.
Yeah. What's the next option?
The next option is a blank canvas where we can just, I've got the buildings and we can move them around. And we could talk about any other options you guys want to. So I just highlighted the science wing there. And
Cause that's kind of the anchor, I mean,
Yeah.
what we've told them is that's gonna stay.
You know, assuming that we're trying to work with this, that's where it is. You know, the rock building is staying, but this is a 30,000 square foot gym, so you can kind of see how big that is. I've got some parking lots too, but, this is what I drew on that other scheme, you know, I'm showing something like that. But, you know, you can move these around. If anybody wants to talk about what it would be like to have a building down here, you know. It's just the further away you get from the math and science, the harder it is to utilize that without kids having to walk along with it. I also have a two-story building, in case we want to see how big a two-story building is. You know, that's all the footprint of a two-story, 70,000 square foot. You know, so that's another option.
Can I use that?
Yes. And keep in mind, that's a two-story.
Is that 70,000, is that just classrooms and no gym?
Yeah,
That's-
70, I use 70,000, because there's about 10,000 square feet in the POR for a PE space.
Okay.
So I took that out of this, and I included it in a larger gym.
Yeah.
Do you have one just the math and science wing?
Uh,
Is-
That's it right there. So I don't have, you can't move that
Yeah,
around.
it doesn't need to move. yeah.
That's existing, but that'd just be moved up to there, correct?
No, you'd leave it where, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
this would stay where it is. It's the existing building.
Cause the other
No,
is the
I meant
old,
The wing,
It would come
This
down.
wing here, that would get demolished.
yeah, that wouldn't be rebuilt.
Well, yeah, it would be built, you know, as part of your new building. But this would all get, eventually, this would all get torn down and that gets torn down.
So this is where that parking lot was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, one of the concerns that I think Navajo's had when we talked about this before is working around that old rock building that it could, if they go digging too close to it, it could cause some issues for that building and you
If, we could have our structural engineer look at that,
move
but
back.
if we stay about 10 feet away, 15 feet away,
Yeah, okay.
which that scheme that I had shown before, you know, there's a parking lot here, but that's at least 10 feet, 15 feet away, and this is, I'm not showing anything built right there, not that you couldn't, but, yeah, we can stay away from that rock building.
I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I like the idea of the two-story building and not having such a huge building, but I don't know. I know that comes extra expensive, like elevators and things like that.
Yeah, we kind of talked about this on Friday. There are some savings. This roof would be
Foundation is a big
smaller.
cost, yeah.
Yeah, the roof would be smaller. There'd be less exterior envelope, more than likely, which means less energy loss. First floors of two-story buildings tend to stay a little cooler because they're kind of insulated by the second floor. The foundation does not get twice as big.
Yeah.
You know, so
Where would a cafeteria be?
probably if you did something like this and you put a building there, it would probably be on the first floor on this end.
So in that building?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay, so it's not separate.
right. And it could be, you know, if that's something you want to look at. But right now, yeah, this is a 70,000 square foot building, just like this, only it's 2 stories, so it's
Okay.
just half the size.
Well, that would be a concern, I mean, maybe it's not, of having cafeteria in your building, because if you're gonna have classes above it, you're gonna have sounds and smells that wouldn't be conducive to.
We had, the library was above the cafeteria in that old, in the first design.
Right.
Because it was a 2-story. We can.
But that's just a thought, it's not a deal breaker, by no means for me.
But a lot of times the cafeteria, because of the sound in there, you might want it to be a little taller, but, so that makes it a little harder if there's a space above it, because you don't want to get too tall.
Can a cafeteria be a safe room?
Yes.
Tell me about this option here.
Chad, you want right here?
I'll sit here, take my seat.
So, you see the plans that I
Yeah,
Okay,
like the little-
so right here, where these three buildings are, it drops off considerably, maybe 8 to 10 feet.
Right in front of it.
And a safe room
Then it would be
probably would
right
work
there.
better if it was lower down on the ground, you know?
Yep.
And, you know, you're gonna have to build up a foundation anyways, 10 foot deep down here. What about let's say a 60,000 square foot two-story, so it'd be 30,000, so a little smaller than this. You put right here, and the bottom floor is the cafeteria on this end, and then you have your loading docks from the customers bringing supplies in. Right here, it'd be right off the road here. There'd be a loading dock to load all your food and everything. The downstairs, it only has to be like maybe the outside 10,000 square feet here. And it's the bottom floor, it's a safe area too because it's down here in the ground. You're having to do a stem wall anyways, so you might as well beef it up and make it a tornado shelter type space.
Yep.
And then you can drop this upstairs if you're taking 10,000, now you're 30,000 for the second floor and 30,000 for the third floor.
Yeah.
It's really only 2 floors, counting the basement, you know,
Yeah.
the basement would be the cafeteria.
Uh-huh.
You know, something like that might be an option.
Yep, we can certainly.
Because of the lay of the ground, you know, but of course you could do it here too, and just this end would be the low point, and this end would be the cafeteria. You could do the same thing and just narrow it down a little bit.
I think that's a good option there, but whether we build a gym now or later, if you remember, we looked at this space here.
That would be a good place for a gym.
That's
yeah.
where the gym would go. Now that we don't have to build a cafeteria, a auditorium, that footprint can get a little bit smaller, and you still freeze up. You know, this would come all the way back in the square off. That's gonna be gone eventually. Now, what you can put there, I don't know,
Probably
but I think the reason we talked about that, and I think is that a kid would never have to leave that building unless they went to business building or an
But if you pull it forward, they wouldn't have to leave the building to go to business anyway, because it's literally like right there.
No, but they gotta walk all the way across the campus to go to the math science wing. And there's how many
would-
classrooms over at Craig?
5.
That's a concern. And losing that street, I think that's,
Do you think losing the street's a bad idea, though? I mean, like, I feel like that there's a lot of, like, drive-through.
From your average school day, no, because we didn't allow kids to go to the
Right.
west side anyways after school. They had to go out the east side to the baseball side. Your football games, graduation, basketball games, track meets, things like that. After school events, I think you'd see it a little more, but to me, it's like anything else. Once it was like that and you got used to it.
But I mean, if you go over to West Side, you're gonna park on one side of the ball field or the other side of the ball. Nothing's connected over there anyway. I think we've just been fortunate that all our buildings have these little like connections to parking lots, and it's not like that everywhere.
I still like the idea of that right there. Whether we do the gym now or later, we still got the spot for it. It's connected to the math and science wing, it's connected to the gym, or it's connected to the new gym. It's just all connected together, and it's a smaller footprint, where sometime in the future, 30, 40, 50 years from now, when I get old, that may be, you may want to build something out here. I mean, there's not much room. I like the idea of two-story, and in that location right there where we can tie it in to existing math and science wing, that it would all be one. And the only thing that you would still have the courtyard, the kids could go outside. From a safety aspect, I really like that. The kids don't have to leave the building. If they don't go to business or whatever, they never have to leave the building.
I don't like the idea of them going to the business building. Period. I mean, regardless
Yeah.
of whatever we build. I think if you're gonna build a brand new school with brand new classrooms, you need to move the business classrooms into the brand new school. Like, it doesn't make any
Well,
sense to
that
me.
makes sense, but that's a bigger cost. You're talking about 4 more classrooms.
Something we don't know about.
With this, I guess the big question is what we can afford to build. I think we all think that. I mean, I think we're gonna have to come up with a couple of proposals with a gym and without. Don't y'all agree? It's all about money.
You know, this right here, if we can, even if the number to 350, you know, we're still at 24 million, you throw in another 8 million, that's 32 million. I think it's feasible, but.
I do too, after I looked those numbers. I just did a rough sketch on it as far as architect fees, CM fees, all the extra fees. It's about 5 million. Am I right?
Well, when you were throwing out these numbers, you're including all those fees, correct?
No.
Not in like, if you're talking about $350 a square foot, that does not include, that includes the CM fee, because there.
Oh, it does?
Well, yeah, at 350, it's a moving target, you know, I mean, you just never know what the end result's gonna be, but yeah, that's generally, that's for construction, and the CM fee is considered part of construction, so. So if they gave you an estimate, they would include that fee. Our fees,
Right.
depends on, you know. it's
You got your technology fee, and I mean, just at the elementary, if I remember right, it was close to $1 million, just technology. And with this, I'm certain that y'all agree, I think we all agree, we want, you know, the secure doors, which are very expensive in the past system, which is gonna be several $100,000.
Yeah, well, you think about it, $200,000 is $2.50 a square foot, it's not gonna jump up more than 30. But I'd say, you know, if we come up with a budget, remember what you're looking at, you can probably come up with some ideas for us, right?
Yeah.
And if you start crunching numbers and you say, hey, guys, I can't get in those numbers, well, just be honest with us, you know?
Sure.
Well, I think, you know, and I'm just gonna, I think going back to our conversation on Friday, right? I mean, that's one of the questions I asked is, can we, you know, we're talking 100,000 square feet, can we get it done for 35 million? And to use your word, it was, we probably, I mean, thinking the answer is yes right now, but that window is starting to close, right? The longer we go out, the less likely it is we're gonna be able to meet that target. Am I?
Yeah, it's just hard to know what the climate's gonna be like in a year with tariffs and where the economy's gonna be. And I brought up Hoxie as an example. Hoxie got great numbers. We were all,
270,
they came in under budget. We weren't expecting that. I don't think the CM was expecting that. I think that they bid that out a year ago. I think it was just good timing. Some of it was.
I think everyone's kind of been spoiled from COVID numbers, and they're trying to keep their numbers up there as far as what they charge for labor and profit. And now they're starting to need work, from what I've been hearing.
Yeah.
And now they're starting to whittle their numbers down, and it's starting to drop. Now we've got tariffs coming in. My screw company just announced a 35% increase. The only imported item I have is screws. I spend $600,000 a year on screws. So it's gonna cost me $200,000 a year for my screws now.
Yeah.
And I wish 2 years ago I had started making my own screws, but I drug my feet and never did.
New business opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, 95% of this building is gonna be USA made products probably, so we won't really have those tariffs. But your little light fixtures and stuff like that may go up 30%.
Yeah, but yeah, I'd say, like you said, you know, it's, Corning, we're bidding Corning out pretty soon. I think that'll give us an idea where things are. Yeah.
Well, Todd, let me ask you something real quick. Notes here. On the POR, and I'm sure you figured all that, are you figuring 80,000 square feet by using the POR for 550 students?
Yeah.
Okay. What if we grew 100 students in high school? I'm just thinking down the road.
Yeah, I would, if you wanted to design this for 100 more kids, you know, that'll just get bigger and.
Right, no, I'm just, this is the POR for
Yeah.
500.
What I would suggest if you're thinking about the future is we design it like you're concerned with the business building. You know, we can design it where there could be some future additions that we know that you want to do. But let's say you can't afford to build a new business building, and maybe in 5 years you can, we can design it so we know where it's going to be. And if you're gonna grow 100 students, where would we add on? A two-story, the nice thing about a two-story is you can add on a two-story and you don't need to add another elevator. You know, you might need another stair at some point if it gets big enough, but you can build a two-story addition and you're just using less land each time.
That single story seems to like take all of your
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, I've written this
I feel like with the
down.
house, they do a
As
two-story
far as,
building, you include the
does
business,
any of
it's
the
not
preliminary
going to
work
be-
that we have
the
done in
added
the
cost
past
is
on
not
site
gonna be
prep,
substantial.
can that be used for
For
the,
3 more lines.
all the borings and all that?
We can use the borings, we did them in the existing, like around the existing school. So if we decided to put the school here, we would need some borings out there. But they can add to the geotech they did, they wouldn't have to do a brand new geotech. So for maybe a couple $1,000s, you can get a few more borings added to the existing.
What do you guys think about, we still got room for probably a 12,000 square foot addition here if we ever wanted growth.
Yeah.
You could do a second floor breezeway into that section. And if it's two-story, you'd have 25,000 square feet here as an addition. And you'd have your second floor breezeway to where you're still walking down to the football fields underneath the breezeway. And you could even connect the gym to the back of this building to where all three of these buildings are connected.
Now,
You know?
this building will be gone.
Yes, I mean,
Are you connecting the gym to the complex, or are you leaving a
No.
breezeway?
no, you'd leave a breezeway there.
Okay.
It would connect to here, and then you do a breezeway, like Chad said, to the,
Yeah.
I like the idea of the gym being down there by the complex, but my only issue is when we're having basketball games and things like that, we got people parking way over here to get to the gym, and then this is gonna get
We're not gonna
congested.
be able to keep up with everybody's parking, you know, and then this will allow them to park here too, you know, so.
But one thing you could do, and because I'm with Jennifer, if you're gonna go to two-story high school, I don't see how it's gonna be astronomically different price-wise to add the business classrooms into that building and get rid of that building, and now that's all parking that you can turn into that's more geared
Or turn
towards-
that
yeah.
into administration.
Or turn it into administration if you're not gonna.
Yeah, I would say that building is, I mean, if we replace it, it's $300 a square foot, if you're looking at these kind of numbers.
I
So
just
don't
see
know.
it like, I see it as like
That's a
the
great idea.
elementary school,
Throwing
like
work.
the, no offense, but the dumb decision to put the flagpole across the parking lot for somebody that's in kindergarten and first grade, like, it's just like, I think people are gonna look at it as like, you've built this brand new high school, why are you leaving this building that these kids have to go to? When the point was to keep kids from going across parking lots and going to other buildings and going to other schools and like, but this is the worst place to cross right here, and we're gonna leave it. And then,
Well,
I watched it, when I was in high school, I watched a kid get hit by a car right here. Like,
Well, here's how this will work. In a couple of years, when we can afford it, we build something right here. These students go into here, these people go into here. We remodel this right here, and this becomes the administration building. We have parking back here, whatever you want to do.
is that building that much bigger than the
It's way
current?
bigger.
Huh? Is it?
It's way bigger.
Is this bigger than admin?
It's 3 times the size.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot bigger.
Okay.
And, you know, we remodel it.
I
we,
told you, Todd, I'm not a great spatial person.
All right.
Yeah, you can see here, it's clearly 3
Yeah.
times as big. And, you know, these students will need a place to go. If you move the administration in here, this would be a good annex to go. And then you just basically a breezeway and a breezeway. You've already got a breezeway through here over top of the crowd. I mean, I think that right there would be, the only thing I don't like about it is having to move students for a year while this is being built. You know, my better plan, I think, would be like that. But I don't know if you want your gym front and center like this, you know. You know.
How would you
like-
connect math and
I
science if
like
you
the
put the
flow.
Well,
school?
Out there.
Hey,
And if you look at.
Todd, will you show what,
the gym-
Chad, what you drew
we
up
had
already
to
on the
take
other one?
gym off, Because it came out in,
Chad, this is the first thing we looked at here.
that auditorium.
And this is a one-story, but, you know, if you put a one-story building here and you built that first, you wouldn't have to displace the kids. You know, you build that, you get all the kids moved into the school, then you come back and build a gym here and leave the gym until that's done, so that you always have a gym. Once that's built, then you can tear down that gym, tear down and have parking back there.
I'm fine with that idea too, really.
It's just that single-story building takes up
It takes-
You could do this with
the two-story.
Yeah,
But they
Could we
were
make
saying the
smaller?
road, you lose the road.
Yeah.
like
and you
two-story and then move the gym, put it on the end of it?
Yep, you could
Just
do
like
that.
flip-flop it?
You could put,
Yeah, and then you're not having to
Yeah.
put parking here, you could have, you know, this parking would go here, because now you're two-story right here.
it's handy to put the gym in this area, in this scenario, because you can get a school built, get these kids moved into it without tearing down your school, and then you build this.
Yeah.
Then you tear down the school. and put the-
I guess the disadvantage is you've got a one-way here and one-way here, you can't go
Yeah.
through.
I don't think having the math and science behind the gym is a major issue though, because, I mean, if you go over to Sloan, you're walking across the parking lot to their gym just to get to some of their classrooms, and at least this is connected. I mean, if it was weathering or something, they could still go through the gym. It's not.
Todd, how much of that, how much of the road are you taking if instead of a one-story there, you rework that with a two-story?
You could do that.
Yeah, you'd cut it off somewhere in here, so all that could still be parking right there.
And keep in mind, if you've been here during the school year, nobody hardly is parking here. So, I mean, these parking spaces, kids aren't getting their driver's license very early
Not
anymore.
anymore. You know,
And
that
so-
used to
It
be.
used to be full.
Craig, it used to be
Yeah.
full, didn't it? What, when
It was
you
all
all
10th grade.
So,
10th grade parking was there.
I don't think we need to replace every parking space we have here now, you know?
Yeah, but the fair needs one.
I'm gonna say, you know, my
Influence
two
house
cents on
photography.
this.
Proud of you, Gary.
I'd say we give Craig and Lance and everybody here at the school, you know, y'all kind of see the direction we're wanting to go. I would bring some more of the faculty in that are familiar, like you are, with how the flow goes every day, and y'all lay it out exactly how you think it would flow the best, you know, as far as where we would put the gym, where we would need to put the school. You know, because we can say we like it, but it may not be functional for the way that y'all are used
I
to
agree with
using it.
that. And Craig did a great job of coming up with those kind of things. And I'm sure he's got it somewhere, how it all flows, what's
Yeah.
best for them.
I like the two-story idea.
I do too.
Maximizing the
As
space.
far as the numbers, you think $10 a square foot cheaper per half the foundation would probably be about right, and then about $10 for the roof, because you're saving about half the roof.
Yeah.
But you can only count on a half the square footage, so $10 for the foundation, $10 for the roof, so that's $20 a square foot times 35,000, so that's $700,000 cheaper to do two-story. But then you have elevators that cost, what, $100,000 each?
Yeah.
And that's
How many
where you-
elevators would you have to have in
You
a
just
building?
need one.
Just one?
Yep.
And you've got a few other things that you were not thinking of, like
Stairs
maybe
and
some
just
heat and air units that might, although you said it was cheaper for two-story, I didn't know that.
What is?
Heat and air units?
The heat and air might be similar, but the energy
Gotcha.
usage, you wouldn't be losing as much through your insulation, your walls.
You're also gonna have to have an emergency stairwell rather than
Yeah,
so that's
you-
gonna run
You'd have a
some
couple
money
of,
too.
Well, I
They
know over
have
at
to
Sloan
have
Henry,
multiple
they use the
stairs,
stair.
yeah.
They don't use the elevator at all.
But
Kids use it.
realistically, we're looking at possibly $500,000 cheaper to go two-story. I mean,
agree.
even counting the elevators. And I like the looks of a two-story better school, I don't know, to you guys, but.
Well, I think, I agree with what you said, but given the fact that we're limited on space, and we gotta keep in mind, after we're all gone, this school's still gonna be here, and they're gonna maybe need room to build additional buildings. I still like the idea of putting it kind of where we got it now. I know it displaces kids, but I think Craig's got a great plan for those. And it ties it all together, and they never have to leave the building. I do agree with Jennifer. I wish we could put the business building in it, but I realize that costs us for a lot more square footage.
and if we, go back to this real quick, if you were to put a two-story there and do your gym over here, you're taking out some classrooms and your admin, but you still have your cafeteria, your gym, got classrooms here, a few portable buildings, strategically placed. and
So
it's
if
not
that
as
was,
bad.
if that was a scenario, and it looked like that, right? Could we keep the old wing of the math science while demolition
This
was
year?
going? Yes.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
gonna add you there's 11 classrooms in that wing alone.
I like that idea better, just, I don't like the idea of the entire high school coming down here.
Yeah.
Well, and two, theoretically, I mean, I know we're trying to move the ninth grader in there, but the ninth grade's still in the junior high. Could you not just keep them in there
Yeah.
for another
Oh, yeah.
year?
Yeah,
until
yeah.
we get-
Yeah.
So that's that
Yeah.
many more students that
Did
you
you
got.
see
Cafeteria
the
won't be
setup he had
disrupted.
I know, but that's
Neither
bringing
would the
high school
math
kids
design.
into
Yeah.
there. I don't know that you'd have to do that though, as much.
And you can, I mean, and I think Todd just said this, but you can get previously utilized, mobile classrooms and maybe set them up on this west side here, or I mean, on the east side of the rock building, right? And kind of build out that so that kids aren't too far away,
So you're
right?
just
Yes,
taking
there is.
that front
Now, here's the
hallway.
thing, there is extra cost in that,
Yeah.
obviously.
That's my thing. I mean, to me, that's just wasted money. Don't you
Well,
think
I
about
think,
important
Craig, did
buildings?
y'all have, there would be no additional.
No, I mean, I can get, especially if we keep
Yeah,
that old
if we
wing,
keep
I
that
can
up.
guarantee you every teacher will have a classroom.
Don't you think this could get done in 14 months, this building right here? I mean, they said 20 the other day, I saw in the video, but, I mean, that just seems like a long time. I would
I
think,
think it's,
without a gym, you know?
Being,
Yeah, I
the gym
think
was
for
separate.
Without a gym changes it probably.
Yeah.
yeah.
For sure.
I mean, if we can if
It's
you could
doable.
start at 1st of June, and be finished by the following August, I mean, that's 14 months.
Well, I think if you do it in a way where you give them a couple months to mobilize, where, like 14 months of construction
Yeah, yeah,
is fine. If
yeah.
you give them 2 months to order their stuff.
Yeah,
So that way, they
yeah.
got their metal
You
building
have a
ready to
staging
go.
area for all your
Yeah.
products, and a fence around it, and that's where
But-
they start getting
But
stuff.
if they can get things ordered,
Mhm.
long lead items, and get them all ready, so that they're just.
Because it'd be nice to just do 1 year where they're displaced
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
not
think you
two.
could time it to.
Honestly, my opinion, if we go with that, and we can do the gym, let's do them all at the same time.
Well, I'm not saying.
That way
do
we
them at
don't
the same
have
time.
construction going on for 3 years.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is, this is priority to get done in 14 months, this can drag out for 22.
Because the old
you know
gym
what I
is
mean?
still standing.
Still use it,
Yeah, so you can drag the construction of,
Yeah.
I like the idea of having this ability to have like a connector and put another
And
building here.
ever wanted a 2-story, 12,000 square foot,
Yeah.
double story right there.
Because that was my question in the last building, because I feel like the last plan went from road to, like, it was literally the
We had
entire.
cafeteria in there.
Yeah.
I mean,
But my question to the board then was, what happens when you need to expand? Where are you gonna put it? Where are you gonna put the classrooms?
Yeah, it matched, actually, and Todd, remember, on the end of that gym,
Mm-hmm.
we actually had to cut the gym off
Yeah.
because it was gonna be too close.
I'd say design this for 2,000 students. If we ever add more, we have that right there available, because it wouldn't
Okay,
take
hold
much.
it. How many students?
How many?
2,000?
I'm sorry, 2,000 for the whole. So,
For how many we have now?
right now we have 1,890, right?
You're talking about for the district?
Yeah.
For the
yes.
growth, yeah.
So what, you're gonna design it for, what'd you say, 550 high school kiddos?
Yeah.
And
That
right now we have
includes
what?
ninth grade?
It's about that.
Yeah, that would be.
Well,
That's what the state has said, they're only gonna
Because the
pass
state,
for
that's what the state
credit.
says we.
4
are
classrooms would
required.
get us what, 100 students, pretty much?
Yeah.
So if you have 4 extra classrooms in here, just in case, we grow 100 students. Probably not
Well,
100.
so the POR has how many classrooms that have to be built?
It's required to have 16, and that includes the 4 that are in here. So about.
Well, how about 2 extra classrooms in this high school building? That'll give us a growth of about 100 to 150 students district-wide, right? Because that would be about 50 more high school students. That would give us 2 extra classrooms in case we grow, because we don't want to spend 2 years down the road and then now we have 50 extra high school students. That just doesn't make sense, why we wouldn't have 2 extra classrooms. And so design these to where we have 2 extra classrooms, and if we start seeing that our kids are growing up and we're gonna need 4 or 5 more, then we maybe budget in
Is this number going off of
I
the
agree.
incoming junior class?
What you said.
That's like the largest class in the
These
district right now.
these numbers are state-defined numbers. So the state does a 5, they use the 5 years previous to here, and they build a 10-year projection model.
Okay.
And what they do is they use their 10-year projection model to tell you how many classrooms you have to build.
So having those grades of the 11th grade, and then there's, I think, another grade that has like a lot of kids in it, having those is helpful in these projections.
The state has all that data, they're utilizing those to project. Now, they don't project any more than, I mean, like, theirs is a minimal projection. The way I understand it, going back to the previous building, right, one of the exceptions the state did is the district asked the state to not use the state numbers, but to use district-provided numbers. The district-provided numbers were, I'm gonna say, moderately higher than the state-approved numbers. At that time, they said yes, right?
That was a
Once-
company called Future Think. They did the surveys, actually did it twice. And they projected us at 2,500.
Right, and so I would say those were.
Those are a little high.
Those were pretty high, given
We've
the
never been
actual, right? And so, I say all that to say, we need to use the state numbers. The state's will tell us, this is how many rooms you have to build. And then, now, can we build more? Yes, you can, but it is going to be on the local dime, not the state dime.
Is it about a 1,200 square foot per classroom? What is it?
850.
Oh, wow. Where's all the square footage? What's in here? Because I'm only coming up with 20,000 in classrooms.
They do have some classrooms that are better, but
16.
your average classroom is 850.
So bathrooms, another.
Bathrooms,
It's not
they've got a
enough
multi-purpose room that's 1,500, a project.
Well, let's do
we
14
can build
classrooms.
more.
You said 4 are gonna be utilized out of here, right?
That was my
And
worry last time.
if you do
was it
2
wasn't
extra,
big
that's
enough
14
already,
classrooms, right?
Just being built.
Times, let's say 900 square foot, that's 12,600. What else is in this
We
building?
got your
That's
corridors,
Yeah,
That is
and they have to be wider. for
par
high
for the
school
course
kids.
from a state.
they don't tell you how wide they have to be.
For every classroom,
They
there's,
have like, they have what, vocal room, instrumental room, multi-purpose room, reading room, like
These are all,
career
so all these required
education
spaces have
rooms.
to be in there. So, the 16 there is for classrooms. Um,
Yeah, there's a lot.
Those ones right below it that say one at
Almost
1440,
everything
that's your
else is over
science, so
1,000
those
square
are, we already
feet.
have those covered.
I'm gonna agree with y'all though.
That
We're
is
gonna
your
do this.
career education.
Let's go ahead and pull the business building into it.
Doesn't make any
And let's go ahead and plan on you,
so is this a
I'm
little
not in
bitty
favor of
auditorium?
tearing
like
any
2750?
building
Is
down.
that gotta be in here?
But we can
That would be
utilize
better.
that. Y'all are busting
Where's
at
the
the
total
seams in the administration building.
Well, to me, that helps out because,
They
to
don't
me, you
actually
tear
give you
down
the
your
total.
building
Well,
over
You got
there.
entrance.
Now that
It
helps
could be down
traffic.
there,
Yes.
They put it
Let's
right
stop
there.
Well, the
That's
recommendation
78,000
on
right
the
there.
traffic
Is,
flow of the study was to
Where's
widen,
the cafeteria?
Park Street or Bedrock, whatever that is, anyway, and take out like the tree that's on those trees that are on that, and widen that whole thing, which would mean the building would have to go if that's the case. And
It's
that's-
like
we
you
go ahead and
gotta,
plan
even,
for it.
my thing is, when you're building, so this is the way I look at it, even when it comes to building a house, is be
You've got a
proactive
PE
versus
area.
reactive.
Do we need
Proactivity
these
is cheaper
16,000 PE?
than when you're reactive
Don't
in
we
most
have-
cases.
And
Well-
then you can draw in the city's recommendations when you're trying to pass
You know-
millages and you're trying to.
Well, the other thing is too, we may not use all that space for
No.
administration,
You're
and
gonna
if we did hit a
require-
growing
some
pain,
of
the
those
worst
are-
thing we could do,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
could put a
that's
couple
a place to
classrooms
shift
there.
So those are zero.
Or even that's a
Just
place
the
to shift them
1,850
if you decide to build that wing
plus,
down on the end,
lock
you know what I
in,
mean?
Locker room and
It's a
some
big
bathrooms in
It
it.
is.
But that would be in
There's
the
only 4
gym.
classrooms in?
Correct, that's why I use 70,000 and.
But then you have
I
one
added
room you
10
could
in
already
that.
have as a
I
board
made
room,
it
it's
30
big, I mean, it
because
could have,
with the bleachers.
you wouldn't even have to
and
really
concessions, yeah.
do a whole lot to the.
Well, it's
bigger
just,
than you think.
if we only need 20,000 square foot of classrooms, 50,000 in extra stuff just seems.
So,
Never been in
to
Allegheny
interject,
to
20,000 in
building, so.
classrooms, 16 classrooms. That was my issue last time with the last building plan, was 16 classrooms or however many we had, wasn't, in my eyes, as a parent, was, you're just gonna be right back in the same situation you're in, and ninth grade's not gonna be able to be in there because you don't have enough space.
I think we had like 30 classrooms, it was
So-
actually pretty big.
So we're down to 16 in this one?
Yeah, that
Wow.
Future Think study had like 800 kids in the school or something, it was a lot more. That,
So-
it was a
But
big.
it's
And you have to
16
remember-
classrooms isn't, no.
But that's 18 if we count the 4 in here and then 2 extra here, so 16, will do that do ninth grade also?
Yeah, that 550 number is
According
ninth
to
grade
this,
They're
included.
saying there's
Is that enough room to cover the business building also, the classes?
No, you would have to add that. That's
Well,
leaving business.
I mean, if the classrooms are, you know, it only has in here 13,600 square foot for 13,600 square foot for classrooms, out of 70,000. It wouldn't take much to make that another 1,000 or 2,000, another 2 classrooms. And I think we could rob somewhere, you know, from something.
What the state requires,
Wires,
they'll check
those.
all those
Mhm.
spaces, and make sure.
But like it requires a multi-purpose room. We
Yeah,
would
yeah,
call
you
it
can-
on the drawing, multi-purpose room,
Yeah.
so the state sees it and
Gotcha.
says y'all have it, but y'all use it as a future.
classroom.
It's
Yeah.
probably
what
required to be
about-
1,200 square feet,
But
so it'd
listen
just
to-
be a little
listen to what she
larger.
said. What is all the other classrooms?
So there, I mean, that would include like a,
There's one that's called an instructional multi-purpose room, and it's classroom size 850.
Yeah, and like,
You
what
guys
does
can
that
use
even
that
mean?
for any classroom you want.
So
yeah.
that
There's
could pull one of
probably
those
s-
business
Yeah,
classes.
there's probably a couple extra spaces.
Computer
Well, that's what I was gonna
labs,
ask, so
multiple
that multi,
music
it just
rooms,
has to be on
art
campus, so if you
rooms,
pull business classes into that building, could you not say
library.
that multi-purpose room is
A lot of-
now in the business
that's
building?
No, because they're paying you for it. So if you're gonna say it's already an existing space, then they're gonna.
But it's not,
remove-
you're trading it out, you're basically saying, I'm taking these
You can't
classrooms
do
and
that.
moving them
Can't
over.
do
You can't do that.
Have to build new.
What is that?
That's why I asked the question.
You can do it, you just don't tell the state you're doing it.
On the drawings, we call it what
These
they
are being
want it, and
recorded.
then you use it how you want it.
Gotcha.
Well, Todd, for my mind, could we look at it based on the POR, based on what the state requires, 550 students, the square footage, and that's what you've done initially, isn't it? And that square footage is what?
Well, 70,000.
So,
So
okay.
ask me that again, I'm on
If
this.
we base it on what the state's paying us for,
Yeah.
we're gonna maximize our funds from the state, we're gonna maximize our funds from, you know, our local and whatever. And then, if we want to increase it, like Chad said, maybe added a couple of classes, we can increase it in X number of square feet. I'd like to see a price on both of those.
Yeah.
You know,
We-
plus, you know,
One
the
of
gym
the,
is separate.
one of the strange things, the way this works, is this is closer to what the state is actually helping you pay, 34,000. I don't know the exact number, but
if like 19.
they're not actually funding you for a 78,000. It's much smaller, I don't even know if it's this much, I think it's more like
Yeah, but you still
31.
got the-
Because
how many in
if
the
you take that times 289, that's 9.8. So, for your purpose, you have to build 78,000 square feet. But they're giving you X amount of dollars. A lot of people get caught up in, well, are they paying for this, are they paying for that? They're paying you for 78.
So how many classrooms do we currently have between
$7.5
what
million.
exists right
So we're
now?
talking
You
about-
have to
You've
build
got
78,000
20 classrooms at the high school right now,
Counting
19.
business
They're
building.
not really paying you for a lot of this school.
Not
Not
counting the business building.
Not counting, yeah, 19, had teachers.
In a perfect world, they'd say,
Old high school.
you have to build
We're gonna build
78,000 square
16
feet.
of them.
No, no.
That
It's gonna cost
There's
you
a lot of
32,000
classrooms in there
square
that are
foot, so
labeled
we're gonna have to
differently
deal
than
with
just
all of
But is it
that.
enough? They've got 19
They,
already, and then you gotta bring ninth grade
Uh,
classrooms.
Another question I had is, what's the gymnasium, what would be the
So we
square
can
footage
build more
on that?
classrooms, we just gotta do it on our own.
So they're-
It's gotta be
the state-
local down, basically,
You
not the
have to
state.
build 10,000 square feet-ish.
Okay.
You can build as many as
9,000
you
square
want.
feet.
But that's, I think that's
But
the
that
message you
doesn't-
gotta make the
that's not
public
big enough
understand,
for
like,
bleachers and
the
that.
reason
So
why
I'm
the
guessing
money
at
needs to be
least
there is 'cause
30,000.
if we did what did all we could do with the state money, we're not
What was
gonna
the
be,
square footage on
we're gonna be basically replacing the same
It's
problem we
about
currently
that
have.
footprint.
Okay.
That-
At
I
best.
know we cut it back a little bit.
I'm pretty sure this is the same footprint from that old.
That's
What
where
we
I'd
were
be
looking at
apprehensive of throwing
doing,
those
at
business
least,
buildings in
I
on
wasn't
the
part of
front
that
end.
original plan, but when we were
Because
reworking it to
of
kind of
sheer
do a
space.
portion of that, at least, we were looking at the same thing. There were some rooms that were going to be split
Well, the
actually
building
and
would be
used as
disappearing,
like
so you could do it with anticipation of to
OTPT
try to put the
and
business
something else,
classes
you
in
know,
there, and if it
like
didn't work
what
out, you still
we
have
had
the building,
labeled,
you know
but
what I
y'all
mean?
were gonna use it as a classroom, so it just had a wall down the middle that, you know,
Yeah, that's,
I'm not
and
for
I
sure,
think,
but I think there's 25 different classes. They're not labeled classrooms, they're labeled other stuff. But I think that's about what we have on
We'll have plenty of, we should, and we can, once we get to designing a floor plan, we could talk about it.
25.
like-
Moving things around or
Yeah,
whatever.
we
however.
could talk about
Because you wanna make sure like, hey, this multi-purpose room needs to be right here, it's actually somebody's
Right.
room.
It looked totally different.
So we're at 31.
You know, some schools don't want a computer lab. We have to have a computer lab and call it a computer lab, but you don't have to use it.
Do you have to have a computer lab in the high school? I mean, how,
You do.
more than
Kind of
one
like art
classroom?
room.
It'll be
Is that
listed.
considered a classroom?
But like he
Art
said, we
room?
can use that as a
Yeah.
classroom.
Well,
That's
there,
there.
we have one.
Actually, no, you don't
So
have
it's
to
a
have
matter of,
one.
I think it's give or take, I mean, it's kinda like.
I mean,
band,
do kids
you know,
really use
that's-
Like a media
like?
lab?
You don't have to
They're
have one.
required.
You don't
Is
have
that
to have
just
a
middle
computer lab.
school?
You already have those
That's
spaces over
elementary.
here.
Oh.
But you'll have an art room, you'll have instruments.
An instrument
I didn't
room,
know
what's
the
that?
instrument room.
That is,
Like
For like band?
Band,
that's
yeah.
for band, but
And
you
not
already
No,
have
we
band
already
on.
have band building?
Yeah, I didn't even count
Not
that.
everyone.
No, we're gonna build that band room.
Don't take it away.
So, yeah, that might be one that you might.
It could be another
We're gonna
classroom.
build that band
Something
room.
else.
So we'll have a band room?
Yes.
You can also be a.
Hang on. What?
There will be some space, I promise you.
Yeah.
Could also be what?
But yeah, like he said, once we're working on the plan, we can label all these
Like an
rooms that are
adult
required,
where
what they're
You could
named
have
here,
larger
and then y'all
meetings,
can
larger
say like,
classes in there. You
nope,
could bring two
we don't
classrooms
need
together
a
and
separate
meet
band
it.
room, it
You know,
can
I
be
mean,
the same
there's
as the
some
music choir
functionality.
room.
I
And
just
that's
wanna make
when
sure
we'll
we're not
start making those
just
changes and
replacing
you
what we
see what
have
you, how
and not
many
being
extra
able to
classrooms
expand
you
what
come
we
up
have.
with.
With
And
an
like
upgrade.
some of the bigger spaces like that, if you take out a bigger space, like, and say we don't need an instrumental room or something, well, then we put a divider wall down it on the drawing and y'all,
We
you
leave the
know,
wall off, yeah.
yeah.
We could put a bulkhead in the ceiling, so you don't have to mess with the ceiling if you had a wall later, that kind of thing.
There's-
But what we'll do is we'll label each room, what you guys want to be, we'll put a note on there that I'll delete when I send the drawings to the state. But it'll say what you guys are actually wanting to use it for. We can put names of teachers in the rooms, so we'll make sure everybody's accounted for, we've got some extra rooms. We can do all that as we move
Okay,
forward.
I mean, there will be some change, like, or some trade-offs, like, there's not factored into that square footage sets of stairs, like your whole entire stairwells. I mean, that's gonna add a little bit of square footage, you know, there's some trade-offs, and that number always is a little bit, like, on the low end as far as circulation and all of that goes anyways.
Well, you got 13,000 for circulation.
And we could be
Yeah.
a
It
little
just,
bit,
but then it's depending on how you lay it out, you know, yeah.
Plants.
one of the things is how wide do you want?
Well, we were
the
gonna
doors,
just look at this and,
You know, and whether or not we want.
we're not making any decisions on it.
Lockers, you know, before we did away
Would
with
you
those.
shoot me a picture
And
of
every
it?
shrink it a little bit.
Shoot you a picture
Yeah,
of
you
what?
don't have to have
Whatever.
super wide
Whatever.
doors.
Guitar
Centered again on the
whatever the discussion is.
You can take it with you. I mean,
That is career
It's in the
education,
email
so,
too. The
so
copy.
they're
Yeah, just take that with you.
Large number.
Yeah, you're required to have 3 minimum units, but they
I think we wanna
counted
be
that you've
here,
got some existing
And I think it's gonna be
space.
closer to 35 million when we're all
That-
said
I
and
don't
done.
think we have to.
That's gonna be
actually
available
include
to us instead of 34.
Because you have band, you have.
Oh, I have to go.
No, I appreciate it.
See y'all.
See you.
Yeah, well, when I look at it and I see 20,000 max in classrooms, I mean, we can make it work.
Yeah, it's like, once you get into the plan and y'all see it, I think that's, a lot of that will make more sense, like, where you can pick up spaces that you may not need but are required, and just where you can get some of that square footage from. It's probably easier, yeah, when you see the plan, see those, that list on it. and
Actually,
then-
when he comes back like the other one, and Craig was instrumental, in that, he had every classroom labeled with the teacher's name on it. Everything was really.
I don't know if you can do it. I always visualize when you walk in high school, I like to have a foyer that's tall, you know, like 2-story tall. And, you know, like, you're gonna end up being, I think you should do 38,000 on the base and 33,000 on the second floor. That way you can have a nice, very large entryway where the elevators are at, you know, or whatever. For when you walk in there, it doesn't seem like you're just in a 1-story building. You have a nice
Oh,
little
yeah,
place.
That comes under design of the
Yeah.
architect.
And where you're wasting space because you're in, you know, your 2 floors, but I just think it makes it look so much nicer.
Yeah.
You know, and,
So what
let's-
does this do to the rock building? Just standalone?
It's
leave
just
it
there.
It's there.
Figure out what to do with it later.
One thing, I want to add up, I mentioned Dr.
Pretty far
Arbuckle.
away too.
There is, last year there was an issue, you know, the plaques out front,
Just blocks everything.
you know, the rock, remember the issue we had with those rock things out front? I mean, we got roasted over those.
Why can't you leave them?
You can think that there'd be the one, yeah, that'd be, no, that'll be
But
torn
can
up
they not
during
be-
construction. They'll be torn up during construction, but,
I will worry about that, man.
you can't move them. But at one point, the Historical Society approached us about donating them to them, and they took it, and the board actually voted to donate those to the Randolph County Historical Society. So,
Personally, I still would like to have, I think for the benefit of the district, I'd like to get rubbings of each one of them with the thought of, you know, maybe we put them, maybe we I mean, yes, the stones themselves can go to the Historical Society, right? I wonder what it looks like to get rubbings of them and then replicate them somewhere else on campus, right? Bring some character and retain the history side
Yeah, you might
of
be
that
able to
piece.
do rubbings and then do plaster casting or something that can be.
but the whole idea, you know, that, it's gonna be in the way, those will be torn up. Matter of fact, that whole parking lot will be torn up.
I mean, this doesn't bother me as bad knowing that we can keep this space to not displace kids as bad. I mean, like, I understand some classrooms are gonna have to go down to the junior high or something's gonna have to happen, but if it can be done in a year, 18 months max or whatever, it wouldn't be that bad to be able to have these classrooms back here. And I like the idea of not taking up the entire space. So the two-story, to me, is
Yeah.
the most feasible, but I'm not opposed to, always in my head, I thought the gym would be down here, but that makes sense too, with it being down there by the complex and
Right.
having that extra corner space to add on.
Let's talk about, I mean, just a little bit about Jim. I think the cost is one thing, you know, we're gonna be looking at as a board. If you add another 30,000 square foot, do you consider the cost about the same as classrooms? I mean, how would the construction company look at that? What kind of estimate
It'll
would
be
they give us?
similar, if it's all.
Talking about with the
built in-
gymnasium,
Yeah,
they quoted over 400 a square foot for gymnasium
oh,
versus.
really?
I talked to Tate last week, and they said he's one of the guys that are owners. They said it depends, but it's usually comparable, you know, to classrooms. Because you got a lot of open air in
Yeah,
there.
it's just open
Yeah.
air.
But then you got
mostly.
auditorium
you guys got
seats or
structural,
bleachers and
yeah.
stuff that's gonna be.
Beams and things like that are gonna
There's a
be.
lot more in a gym that's under their contract that all gets lumped into that per square foot, like, usually bleachers are included and stuff, whereas like a classroom is literally an open space, like, oftentimes the classroom furniture is purchased by y'all and everything, and so there's just, like, any concession equipment in a gym, usually under their contract, a lot of extra restrooms, so extra plumbing fixtures, bleacher, like, there's a lot
The basketball goals.
that they're, yeah, exactly, equipment, so that's that, structure-wise, you know, that, yeah,
Here's
they
what I
know
would
better,
like to
but.
say is, I think, is have an idea of, okay, the building, I know it's an estimate, it's gonna cost this much. What include architect fees, CM fees, furnishings, technology fee? I'd like to see what that would cost. Or an estimate. If we did this right here, just the way he's talking about, that standalone building. And we can do all this other stuff. Because if we can afford that, then we've got something to work with. And if we can add the gym to it, great. If we can't, you know,
Well, if we,
we have to wait.
hopefully we can, but if we
Yeah.
can't, maybe it,
But I think if you broke it down into a complete project and then separate project, as far as both of them together, then the building. This right here, according to the numbers that you sent us, I think this, I'll be honest with you, that's well within, we can do that.
what
Yeah, I think
happens,
so
They
too.
have to-
what happens to those extra classrooms at the end of the science? If we don't build the gym with that building, what do we have to do with that?
This here,
Yes.
Those will stay.
you have to tear it down.
We have to tear it
eventually.
down.
Yeah.
They give,
Well-
well, they give you money for demo. If you don't tear it down, you can't use it for academic space.
I,
So you'd have to disconnect it from the gym?
You just wouldn't use it.
Yeah, they don't say what you,
so I wonder
You
if
can
Doc,
put your admin.
when we were
maybe,
talking
things
about it, I
like
wonder
that
if Dr.
stuff.
Stein was thinking about that as a part of the 2.8 that goes away.
I don't know, probably,
Well, in the past, like the elementary, I mean, it said, when we signed off on it, it is to be demolished.
No, I get that, but I asked Dr. Stein specifically, I said, tell me how much the state portion of, you know, what of that $7.485 million goes away if we keep the gym? He said 2.8. So if 2.8 goes away, I was, when he said
might be
that,
right.
I envisioned 2.8 for that entire gym and math science section.
yeah, he does have it listed right here, gym, math, science wing, 28,000, so,
So
So it would stay.
you would have to, we ended up keeping that.
I don't know, it's hard to imagine that all that is 28,000, I don't think that'd be bigger than that, but, I'll look at that. I can talk to Dr. Stein about that, but he does have it listed as gym, math, science wing, all in one.
I mean, ultimately, I think we need to not lose $2.8 million.
I'm gonna say, because the thing is,
towards
you
the
say the
gym.
gym's 9 million, then you lost a third of it was being
Yeah.
paid for. If it was 12 million, you still lost a quarter of it. I mean, you just hate to throw away money that on a project you know you're gonna do down the road.
You're eventually gonna have to, yeah.
But here's what's gonna really boil down to, guys, is the public gonna support a higher millage?
I think, Gary, I think the concern or the challenge with giving you that kind of detailed information is we're asking individuals to project 2 years out. What is technology gonna cost in 2 years? What is, you know, and I don't know. I mean, I think they can give it to us what it is right now, you know? But what I'm hearing is, I'm thinking that we won't really know, or we won't have any more information to base our decisions off of until Corning comes in and we know what that bids out at, right, on their side of it. So, it's not, I guess I'm saying it's not impossible, but I'm not sure how close those numbers are gonna be.
I understand.
23 million for this building and 8 million for the gym. I think those are, I don't think we can afford more than 31. And
Do you
that's
think we can do that for 23?
at 350 a square foot, you can. Actually,
And that's
no,
putting a safe room in the cafeteria?
that's-
You think that's because it's lower, if you put it on that end, it's
I think
lower?
There's a couple of good things. One, if we did get it to work, that there's some kind of a
yeah.
basement wall or stem wall.
Now, you
But-
might have to drop to 65,000. Can you do that?
This here,
Yeah.
as long as we have
Like everything we need on there?
everything
Yeah.
checked off in the pure.
Um,
But one good thing about a two-story is if we put the tornado shelter on the first floor of the two-story building, you're already gonna have a concrete second floor.
Mm-hmm.
And more than likely, you'd want to be made out of concrete.
So would it be cheaper to put it in the building versus in the gym?
If it's a two-story school, I think it would be best to be on the first floor of that, because you already have that second floor above it that can serve as the cap or the lid for the tornado shelter. It would double as,
Now, the other thing to consider is, when we talked about this on Friday, if the district's talking about, or the board's talking about, we're gonna build the classroom space and then come back, even at the same time, like even right after that's done, then we're gonna start working on the gym, right? The state's probably not gonna let us put the storm shelter in the gym, because once we put like that storm shelter has to be built before they're gonna let kids go in that building.
It makes sense to put it in the cafeteria. To me, it makes sense to go ahead and put it in the main building, because you're already gonna have exterior walls, and you're already gonna have a top, then you're just 2 walls on the inside.
Well,
Makes
it
sense.
could also be, so the big thing about deciding where you want that storm shelter to be is where do you want windows? Like, would you rather have windows in a cafeteria? Because then like the art room and the instrumental room where you'll want soundproofing and stuff, then you make both of those the storm shelter.
I mean, do you
You know,
really have
I
to
like-
have windows in a cafeteria? I mean, to me,
It
like,
just depends on what you, like y'all's preference, that sort of things.
Yeah, you
But
don't
there,
have to.
like, we've combined classrooms. I mean, We do that a lot. A classroom is a storm shelter, and it can either be like 2 classrooms, you know, and the portion of the hallway, or the individual like, you can choose classrooms that, you can even put windows in it. That's just expensive, like a lot more
Yeah.
expensive.
I just would like to still see having some kind of courtyard area for the kids, just to be able to get outside if they wanted to, and then,
I do think there's a component of, from like a cafeteria standpoint, of having some natural lighting in there.
Yeah.
Right, and Todd really kind of unpacked for me the other day that, let's say you made like a set of 4 or 6 classrooms. I think this is what you're talking about, Katie. 4 or 6 classrooms. You said these are going to be our tornado safe area, right? Well, then you're just building the tornado safe walls around the exterior.
yeah.
As long as it's on the bottom floor, it doesn't
Because
really
when you
matter.
start saying, well, it's going to be this classroom or that classroom, then what I heard Todd say is those come with very expensive doors, right?
You
Like,
want to minimize number of doors.
right,
Yeah.
because it's like an $8,000 door.
yeah.
And if you've got 6 of those, well, all of a sudden you got $54,000 and nothing but doors.
Right.
Right? And so,
So, here's an idea for you. This ground slope's about 5 feet from here to here, right? You could actually do the.
But you'd have it close to
the,
that cafeteria though. 'cause
you could do
when
a
you have
bottom
2 sets of
basement
double
with a
doors or something on a
cafeteria and a safe
cafeteria, I
room.
mean,
You're
that's
gonna
4
have to
doors.
have probably 4 exits.
Right.
right,
sticking
and so
out of
the
the
idea
ground
is if
about
you
5
said,
foot,
okay, we're
right?
gonna make
If you
these
recess it
6
down to where this,
classrooms.
the first floor is level with the
Then
ground
all
up
you
here.
need is 2 doors,
It's gonna be
one on
sticking
each
out.
side.
About 5 foot.
'Cause you do have to have-
So you
you
still
do
be
have
able to
to
get
have
some lighting
2
along this
egress
wall
doors
for the
on.
cafeteria.
So you're almost,
But
it's a
you're gonna
minimum
be
of
down in the
$16,000
ground, giving a lot
doors.
safer
Right.
space.
But if you
And,
go with 4.
and then you do
now
full
you're
2
looking at
stories on top of
32,
that, so, and then you wouldn't
like-
have to do 70,000. You do 60,000, so there's 10 in the cafeteria on the bottom floor, and then 2 full floors at 30,000 apiece.
There ain't no 6 classrooms, it'd
And
almost be
that
a
way,
mini wing.
You're not having
Go
to
through
build
those
this
doors just to
foundation
get
up,
into there, and
you
then
know
they
what I
all
mean,
have
and waste all
individual
that.
classroom
Because
doors.
otherwise, you're gonna have to start here and go this way, and your safe room and cafeteria is gonna be out of the ground 5 feet. The floor of it's gonna be 5 foot out of the ground. Instead, you recess it down in there, and on that end, you know.
Yeah, and you can,
Hallways, like
you
classroom
want
hallways that
windows
have
in
doors
the
halfway
cafeteria.
down
The
instead of
price
double
for
doors,
the
usually
tornado
just held
windows has come
open.
down. We just.
Like, and that's usually
Valerie, you put
separated
some
for
windows in
fire
classrooms.
reasons. But that
We-
door would
they
be
were
there
like
because that's like
unaffordable,
starting
yeah,
the
a
few
storm
years
shelter.
ago.
Like, it would
But
look the
they've come
way
down.
that
We did one school
y'all
where
are
they
used
really
to
wanted a
seeing, like a
window,
long
and it
classroom
was cheaper
hallway
to
with
put
a set
a
of
tornado
doors, you know, halfway
shutter
down.
that comes
It
down
doesn't,
as a
like,
tornado.
if you did
It's
it that
cheaper to
way,
put
if you
that
did the
shutter
storm
in
shelter where it
than it was
was,
to buy the
then
tornado window. And
everything
that shutter
in
was
that,
$40,000.
is protected,
But now
and
the
you can
windows
have the
have come
corridor
down,
then
so
as
it's
part of the
gotten better, so.
space that people
Like
can
he was
sit
saying,
in,
just a
like, you know, that gets,
classroom
all
in
that gets
multiple
counted.
classrooms, if
So
we did it
that's
that way,
just
it'd be not good.
become like kind of a popular
Yeah,
option
we
for
try not
at
to
least
put any
picking
windows in the
rooms
shelters,
that you
but
don't
if you
necessarily
really want a window.
care as
they're
much
not-
about
they're
having
not that
windows,
bad.
and some school
Like, it
districts
might be
do the
a
windows
$15,000
still
window.
shade, like, it's like
I'd rather
shutters
not
that
have
go
windows
down over them,
I'd
it's
rather
not, they
not have
can't
windows
even
in
do
the
that,
cafeteria
but,
versus classroom.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you could easily put 3 on that end, facing out, you know, it would up the budget considerably, you know.
That's just not, if you're not gonna put a window in, I'd rather it be in a cafeteria,
Yeah.
cause they're only in there for 30 minutes and
Do
then.
we all agree this is where we want
If we can keep this for classrooms,
Yeah.
I would agree to
And have
that.
1 year displaced kids.
Yeah.
I'd say I'd be fine with that.
and the gym would go there if now or later that week? I agree. I think that'd be a way.
I just really wanted
I'm
to
just all
touch
spread
it.
out.
Where would the cafeteria, you said the cafeteria this would be? On this end?
It doesn't, I mean, he's gonna
Yeah.
design it probably, but
Well,
I'd
you
say,
gotta
I'd
have-
recommend it on that end.
You gotta have trucks.
Well, I think-
Yeah, you'd have to have a couple little loading docks right here, or, you know, it's.
But
stuff
would you want
they're
that on the
the
front of your building?
Yeah, I'm not sure you want a loading dock.
We could
Not a loading dock, just a garage door.
Could you not have it a loading dock like on this end and just put it on that corner?
There's not.
It's the grade that you're wanting.
I was trying to get the safe room down in the ground to be a little safer.
Yeah, it
and-
would be good. But I'll look at that.
But I mean, you know, another option would be, you know, come straight in from here.
Well, if you do
But then you-
this, they'll say, just separate it just a little bit more. I mean, you're gonna have it connected and have it where you can bring trucks in. You know how to
Could
do
you
it.
pull your gym forward and just like pull the gym up, and then if you needed extra space, you could do a breezeway from this building? Oh, well, cause it's only one story.
Well, how much more expensive would it be to make that corner of the building like a third floor, almost like the cafeteria is a basement,
what we
then you
talked
do
about
first
just
floor and
now.
second floor?
So I thought if we put the cafeteria recess down in the ground 5 foot, the second floor is gonna be level with the ground here, because there's a 5 foot drop in elevation here. And so you'd put the cafeteria down, recessed down on the ground 5 foot, and that would also be the safe area. And then it would have 2 full floors at 30,000 square feet each, if you got 10,000 for a cafeteria. I think it says 4,200, but then you got the kitchen, which is 2, so probably altogether it's about 8,000 or 9,000. Because they also have food storage and stuff like that. So about 8,000 or 10,000 on this end, and that's gonna be the cheapest place to do a bottom, block, because you're not going, and you don't really wanna put something 10 foot deep in the ground because of water issue, penetration in the future. I mean, you can't get cellars,
Well-
basements to seal very good sometimes.
In our mind, though, Todd, what are we looking at, 70,000 square feet, that's what you're talking about?
Yep.
So we need so from a financial standpoint, that's what we gotta think of for, you know. It's up to you to.
400 square foot,
Options
28
on the
million.
design.
And one thing to keep in mind too, that we need to be thinking about is if for some reason we didn't build a gym, that has to be 80,000, because that 10,000 PE
okay.
space has to be built.
Okay.
It's-
So we really
they won't-
have to build the
Unfortunately,
gym.
they won't accept, we're gonna put it in the gym in the future.
So not building the gym is really not an option.
It-
It's really not, because you're gonna have to build that space anyway.
10,000.
Yeah.
How many
And
square
you're gonna lose-
footage is the gym?
Well,
And you're gonna
30?
lose $3 million.
If you don't build that, then you still have your old gym, so it's, and I miss.
Okay, gotcha.
But you
think
have
we'd
to
be
put
okay.
10,000 square feet into that
We,
building.
the 10,000,
Count it here.
I think we could count this. I think I was wrong what I just said. I think, you'd be okay.
But we would lose the 2.8 million.
Yes,
Yeah.
you would lose some funding, but yeah, you wouldn't have to build the gym space in that.
I just,
It'd be great, we could build them both.
I mean, I think it'd be great, because I feel like the high school, if you build a new high school, the gym, it's just part of it. If you built a new junior high, you would build a new gym. If you built a new MD Williams, you would build a new gym. Like, it's part of the building.
Great, I'd like to have them both, can we afford it? That's gonna be the bottom line.
Well, what I like about this plan right here is, I mean, I know you guys like pretty, but this back 3 sides, I mean, does not have to be
I don't think
pretty.
it- I
could be
think it just
block,
has to
could
be presentable
The
from
front
the
can be
road.
brick and nice looking brick.
It doesn't
and
have to be that way
some
on the whole way
decorative,
around.
and these other 3 sides are not gonna be seen that often. You might do brick, but
I mean, I only have
brick
brick
on
on the front
these
of my
sides,
house.
but
Ah,
nothing on
that's
this
what I
back
like.
side.
Split face, that place.
Yeah.
See,
Cheaper.
I like more of the, I know Chad's in the metal siding and stuff, and I'm not opposed to that, because my idea of a new, I like the image of like a modern school, like very modern, like sleek lines, like, I don't like traditional looks. I like the whole Wynn school to me is intriguing because of all the new modern looks that they have to it. And I don't know, so me, the brick is just a waste of money.
As far as that goes, the look of it, we have precedents that we have, like from all over the state especially, there's some stuff, like images we've saved from elsewhere, but especially a bunch of the work that's been done across, like Northwest Arkansas, everything new up there, well, you know as well, all the new schools are going like in that newer, more modern looking direction, so it's just a different feel. But we have pictures we can show y'all, and
Yeah.
y'all can say we like this sort of thing, and we
Well,
don't like this sort of thing.
I don't see why there's any reason we can't, like, Todd, Katie, and I can work together, identify some places to go see, and then we take you,
Yeah, don't
take
give
you all
us
to
too many
see.
choices.
No, not too many, but like just here's a metal panel use, that it seemed, we think y'all are, picking up that you like, and here's Sloan Hendricks. Right, I think that's the one that you use
Yeah.
for comparison with the
Do you remember the
block.
red?
The
You
what?
remember the red in the library over there?
Yeah.
Katie and I have a history about the red.
Now, Todd probably knows that when he does work for churches, he probably has a terrible time, because there's too many choices, too many chiefs on this, different things, and you don't wanna give us 5 members
It
the
can be
option,
challenging, that's for
because, we're all gonna have a different opinion, you just need to say which is the best.
It's just
Well, it's when
like
it comes down to cost, you
overarching.
can make it look as pretty as you want, but if it's,
Yeah.
I don't wanna say you're wasting money, but it's not functional money. So it's still gotta make sense
That's
to
why-
be. But I do think it needs to be aesthetically pleasing because school is a business more than it ever has and
Yeah.
whether, and I know you're a more simplistic guy, Chad, but you know, it is what it is. I didn't create the environment, you didn't create it, but it's the one we live in, so we gotta figure out how to,
And it doesn't have to be on all
Balance
four
all that.
sides, just what it
Well,
looks like
that's-
from the road.
That's why Todd and I have a show about the split place block. You know, what was the other, the one thing that we had was $8 a square foot. This is $2. But looking based on the south side, that's where I got it.
Well, here's
They have
the,
the most fantastic looking school. And they use 80% of the cheap split place block. Yeah, but the other, you know, throw
that's the
down.
thing, yeah, it's just being economical with it, once we, like, yeah, we give you, here's an idea, like, do you like the look, this look of a modern one that uses metal paneling this way? Well, then we use it in a specific area, and it doesn't mean the whole thing is that, like, you know, and you get away with.
Believe me, that's what they brought before, I was the same way, I thought, I don't know how it looks,
Onto the road and
but
then-
the way they presented it and brought it to us, we understood it, they did a great
That's
job.
range, yeah, you just,
What's up the red?
I'm doing that in my lot.
Okay, that's the red out of the library. First, it's in there now.
Grades, you know, where the
That
water
wasn't
flows
you,
into
that
those
was the
grades and
other
flows
way.
out.
No, it was
That's what you gotta do
Tracy.
there.
Tracy,
Okay,
I
just heard about it.
Chip was there, I said, where's the red skin red in this classroom? And she put it in there, and it looks good.
Okay, so is there anything else anybody wants to talk about on that? Because I just want to bring your attention. So we've been talking about like dollar amounts. So I gave you a one pager on three different options based on the conversation that Michael and I have had. There's another one here if you need one. And so you can see there that first one, right? If the intention was to generate 18.2 million based on the last conversation that we had when Michael was here, 3.9 mils. There's your partnership money. The excess, if we're going to stay within this 3 mil area, you know, I think 700,000 is about as much as the excess that we're going to be able to tap into. Just because then for every $1,000 increase on that excess, the millage goes up 0.01 points. So just think about it that way, right? So to generate $750,000, you're talking about an additional half point just to generate that kind of excess money. And from a executive standpoint, I'm just not sure it's worth it. Right, so you got $37 million there as a building budget option. If you generate 18.2 million, it is going to cost you 3.9 mils, and all three of these assume a $5 million amount left in the building fund. 34 that we are working on the year end, you know, to bring back to you for period 13 as far as the amount of money that we can carry over. I really think we have not made our if you remember back to your budget that this board approved in September, the budget allows for a $600,000 transfer from operating into the building fund. That's just our standard amount. We have not made that yet. We've not asked to do that yet. We expect to do that in period 13. So that number, I think that number goes up to $35 million because right now the building fund is 16.34 million. You move over, you know, 600,000, you're right there at 17 million. You can keep 5 million in the budget or in the building fund with $12 million. This is figured on 11.5 right now.
Now, this is including refinancing the bond.
It does include refinancing the bond, yes. It's just you're not, so.
for how much?
4.8.
Well, the amount is $15 million. It's generating $15.5 million. The actual bond amount is actually gonna be, it's gonna be closer to like 16.5 to 17, right? But we have to hold back that, $1.5 million in an account to pay off the existing bond that's still there, right? So that's not, when Michael gives us that information, he can give you that kind of detail if you want to see it. He doesn't typically give that kind of detail because people, it's sometimes become confused in the minutia of, well, I thought you said it was a $15 million bond. Well, it is a $15 million bond because it's generating $15.5 million, but the bond itself actually has to be sold for a little bit more to pay off that first bond, right? So it's kind of like your mortgage, right? You have to, if you're upside down in anything, not that we are, but if you have to generate that amount just to pay it off. Well, we have to generate a certain amount just to pay off the other one. The end result though is $15.5 million of new money to the district. Okay? At 3 mills, 7.485 takes full advantage of the partnership money and gives us a $700,000 excess. If the board decides the gym is a no-go, then we lose we lose 2 whatever it was $1 million. It brings that partnership money down to 4.8 instead of 7.4. You still have the same amount of excess. It just reduces your overall budget by $2.8 million, in essence. So, I mean, it is.
So what you're saying, and we went with option 2, we're talking about 34, we'd be able to raise
34 to $35 million, yes, sir.
Is that gonna be enough to do both the projects when you add the extra cost?
Well, the conversation that Todd and I had on Friday, right, for $100,000 or 100,000 square feet, you're looking at $350 a square foot. Can we get it done for $350 a square foot? On average across the entire project,
What would that total be?
$35 million.
35.
So if we end up having to forego the gym, which I hope we don't, but I mean, if we end up having to do that, is there a way to get money the next year? We obviously won't get state money, but if we had to get another loan per se to build.
Not without doing another bond election, and that would not be.
So it would be kind of the same situation. We'd have to.
So did you design that school on YouTube from 3 years ago?
Yes.
That was 32 million, wasn't it, your school?
That
Yeah.
included the gym and the
Auditorium and everything. That was 21. That was after COVID prices.
Yeah.
That was, why could you have built that one for $32 million? That's way bigger than we're doing now.
Prices have gone up a little bit since then.
Okay, but we're taking away an auditorium, and this was how many square foot?
I don't remember.
It was quite a bit. I mean,
Yeah.
look at that
Yeah.
thing. It's
Went
a
from
lot different animal than we're building
End to
now.
end.
That was $32 million.
Yeah.
So I don't know why we can't build this for
So
32.
I would say you still, like we were talking about Hoxie. I mean, you could have built that for, I don't know what the square footage cost for that, but Hoxie probably was less than that. It really just kind of depends on how lucky you get when we actually bid this out.
Yes, I understand.
So it's definitely possible that school could still be built for 32 million. I think people are just nervous because, in a year from now, I don't know.
Yeah. And I had the 850 seat auditorium in it and everything, and I mean, it was taking out everything, the rock building, everything. So, watch the video if you're gonna watch it from 3 years ago. It talks about couldn't hear it, but I think it talks about everything on the video.
The last cost estimate we did on Corning came in about $309 a square foot. That's what we're really hoping it comes in at, because they're gonna have to take some things out if it comes in much higher than that. So we're not using 350 on Corning, and he got numbers from subs. So we're hoping that 309 per square foot is good. The bigger you build, the better chance you have of keeping that dollar per square foot lower. But we have had projects. We did a couple of gyms in Jonesboro that were elementary school gyms that were like $450 a square foot. They were smaller,
Yeah.
Yeah, Napoltz said 265 to 270 a square foot in the estimates for that one.
You said 3, right?
On the old school. 260.
That was what they were.
She's going back to her notes, she's an avid note
Yeah,
taker.
just back, this was like right after all of that, when we were, so I didn't start working with Todd until we were reworking that plan to try to do like a portion of it still. And at that point, Napoltz in the meetings was using 265 or 270 a square
Which blows me
foot.
away because I built my cheapest store, Arkadelphia, $31 or $37 a square foot. You know, that's the cheapest store I built so far this year. So I don't know, I understand why these companies aren't going down in price, you know?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think, like, the activity gym in Jonesboro, we built that gym. It's got a lot of glass on it, but, we built it at the end of the football field. That was built, we bid that out probably about 4 years ago, and that was $367 a square foot. It's just kind of like they're all over the map, and,
And how busy they are, basically.
yeah. And that one, it's a gym, it's not really, it's not terribly, it's got some nice suites, but the bulk of the building is pretty basic. There's quarters that don't have any ceilings, it's just an industrial kind of look. But it was $367 a square foot. That had some basement walls and some, but, yeah, the numbers are just all over the place, so, there's a hope that this will come in at less than $350 a square foot, maybe even $325. We just are scared because it could be $400, because we've seen that. But
Okay. What 30,000 square foot gym, does that put that gym at like a 2-story,
that is,
sort of?
if it's a separate building, I would recommend trying to do a 1-story, so you don't have, otherwise you have another elevator. If it can be a 1-story and people just come in on the ground floor and walk up, that's what we're doing at Corning. There's gym will just be a 1-story. Once you go to 2-story, you have a big walkway or a track around the top and add square footage. So that 30,000 becomes harder to do. It usually becomes more like a 40,000 square foot gym once you go to 2 stories, so. I don't know if I could do it would be, the footprint of it would be so small, because you'd have like a 10,000 or 20,000 square foot footprint, and then 10,000-ish on the second floor, and to be 30,000.
So 30,000, you're thinking 30,000 all one level?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the cheapest way to do it. It would be a
So
1-story.
we'd still be able to build it down at the lower level. It would be, the seating,
Seating would be
Yeah,
higher.
you'd walk in from the ground floor and walk up the bleachers. The one that we had
No
designed
mezzanine
before
or
was a
anything.
2-story, because we already had a 2-story building, we already had an elevator. So it was a little bit cheaper to do it that way, but it would have been more like a 40,000 square foot gym.
What if you moved your gym up and connected it to your building, where you could use the same elevator?
You could do that.
yeah, you could
it
keep
is.
And
access
then you could have
control
access
if
to
you-
your
if-
cafeteria back here.
And if you need people to walk through here,
No,
this
it's-
could sit here and basically just, you have doors that lock here and people could
But
walk
we'd have to
through
have an
the
entrance to
building
football,
get
right?
back there.
Yeah, well, she's still talking some, like
So,
a
like a
breezeway.
breezeway?
Basically, it'd be like a breezeway that's just inside the building, essentially. Like you could still walk through an open area, but on your left are tickets and doors to go into the gym, and behind that, all of your gym stuff, and on the right are access control doors, to get into the school.
Well, Jim, an elevator is what?
And that
100,000?
elevator can be like in
$3
that
a square foot,
space,
$3.30 a square foot.
Yeah.
What happens if you go to 2 stories is that footprint may get a little bigger for the track, but you'd have space on the second floor, unless it was just a track, that probably wouldn't add a lot of cost. But let's say you had bathrooms and concessions up to, that 30,000 starts to get higher. That's gonna.
I think if you remember, Todd, on that other, we were trying to cut some costs. We took the bathrooms off the end, we was able to incorporate the use of the bathrooms in the auditorium to
Right.
compensate for
We
that.
kinda had some shared
And
bathrooms.
it saved us $1 million. But now we lost some seating.
But if you
But we
have
still
it,
had 1,800 seats.
like Chad was saying over here, would it connect with a breezeway through here? Well, if it's 1-story though, they would have to go out of the building, which is,
Before,
It's not
Todd,
better.
we brought them in from the top level on the mezzanine.
Right.
That's the way we,
Right.
so it was connected.
But if it's not gonna be an upper level, you're not gonna need
There will be
that.
an upper level there.
Not in the gym.
Oh, no, no.
I like having separate buildings just because of leaking factor on roofs. It's hard to
Yeah.
tie buildings together, so.
I mean, they
Well,
can
as long
walk
as you
in that
got,
awning. it's
you
not
got a
gonna hurt.
controlled breezeway like we have at elementary.
Yeah.
That way you've got, they're getting safety factor. Kids, you know, can't be seen from someone outside. Oh, it's a lot to think about.
So,
Really, which way we're getting money is gonna be our priority, right?
Yep. It's all about dollars.
Because August is the last deadline, right, for it?
For the,
Yeah.
to call an election in November, yes. I mean, if.
What are we saying, if we built a gym like we're talking, that, what is a general estimate that it would cost?
I mean, I'll go back and ask some questions.
Yeah.
Neville's at 8 to 10 on your video was, when they were here.
Right. So we're talking about, you talking about 42?
No, I'm thinking,
32 on the
I'm
mill.
thinking 35, right now, after Todd has left me with so much confidence after Friday. I think it's doable right now to build the building and the gym for $35 million. I think that's doable, based on the conversations that I've had.
But what about the extra cost, architect cost?
Well, I've written it down. I'm gonna
Demo.
I'm gonna try to get
Before the estimate was $500,000 just for demo on the building. Plus,
What was Corning?
hazmat, or has,
Well, they're different.
Yes, I will say this, I felt like, we were able to, I think we did a really good job with the demolition of Alma,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
Because that originally, I was told, was gonna be $500,000 as well, and it was not. So, I think those numbers came in pretty well,
I
which,
think what I would need, or what I would want is try to come up with this a total, an option. This is an estimate, include the gym, all the extra costs, architect's fees and all that, and then figure it on just a high school building alone.
okay, so I'm gonna ask a question, I'm gonna set this out there, because I think it's gonna be a conversation that needs to be had sooner than later as well, especially if we're gonna do something different. But I feel like currently the district has a team of experts that we are talking to. Todd being one of those, Michael being one of those, Nabholz being the third leg of that stool, right? I think the is, at some point, I think I'm gonna ask the board, is that the direction we're gonna continue to go? Because there has been some conversation in open meetings about various contractors and what that looks like, and that is something that I think needs to be settled.
I'm
As
completely against Nabholz. Now, they're welcome to put a bid in when we open it up for bids, but we do not need to let them come up with a price for us. We need to open it up for bids.
Well, see, and that's what
Whatever the contractor
that's
is.
part of why I'm asking, because
Well-
I'm gonna go to them and talk to them about price, but if what you're if this board is giving an indication that they'd like to expand that, then I would probably start having some conversations with other people as well.
Definitely.
Looking at the numbers, they're always $50 more a square foot. They do get jobs, but, I think we're better off. $50 a square foot is $4 million on this.
Well,
so
one of the
that
things
could get
that-
us break us $4 million bucks. So, other people do just as, I wasn't happy with their bathroom, their epoxy on the walls. That should have been done better. And I wasn't happy with their $44,000 painting fee that we could have done for $5,000 in-house. It's just, it blows me away that you spend $44,000 on painting bathrooms, and so I feel like we can do far better. Now, if they're welcome to put a bid in, and if they're the best bid we want to go with, well, I'd say let's do it, but we need to open it up for competition. You don't come to me and ask me for
Okay,
Quote on a
well,
building, I'm the only one
so
gonna
the
quote.
way I understand it, and Todd, you've got a lot more experience in this than I do, so please help me here. But the way I understand it is, what we're gonna do is, what I'm hearing you advocate, Chad, is we need to look for a different construction manager. And if that's the case, then we're gonna have, because I'll be honest with
We
you,
need Todd to come up with.
I'm not interested in doing this project
No,
if
no, no,
we're gonna
no.
hard bid it.
The person that bids on the job and that, who gets the job will be the manager. I mean, correct, right?
There's two different ways to do it. You hire a CM, which is what you did with Nabholz on the elementary school. And there's hard bid, which is, you don't know who the general
Like all the
contractor is gonna
spikes
be.
was
Yeah, so.
I don't like the idea of doing that. I mean, I'm not in construction, but I think we need to streamline it as best we can. And
Well, like Hoxie, for instance, they put it out for bids.
Well, Hoxie had a construction manager. It's always put out for bid. It's just, are you putting it out for bid for the whole cost of the job with and a GC will give you a number for the whole job? Or are you hiring a CM, they get bids, they'll get subcontractor bids?
Foxy
And
did interviews.
you're still getting bids, it's just, it's a little bit different process.
But if we stay with Nabholz, can we not tell them, we want this and 34 million is our top dollar?
Yeah, and you can give them a budget and they work with it. I think what Chad is alluding to is, for whatever reason, Nabholz, their dollar per square foot, it ends up costing, might be higher than other CMs can do. I don't know that, that's just something we can all talk further about. We can actually compare numbers. But they.
Well, one of the things I thought
Like
about,
Tate
Todd,
was the CM
if
at
you go back
Hoxie,
through there's a
but they
process you
interviewed
have to
and
go
hired
through, you
them
have
months
to.
before it went out to bid. Sorry. Oh, Tate's the CM at Hoxie, but they interviewed them and hired them months before it went out to bid. Like, so Tate was working with them on the pricing beforehand and everything, like how Nabholz would be helping.
And that's what I was just gonna say, that process, if I remember right, you ever advertise it like for 60 days that you're accepted. We had 5 different companies come in. I mean, some of them dressed in suits. They give us a presentation, and then we had a certain amount of time to make our mind up, which CM did you want to go with? And then you go in the process of construction. And most of the time, if I'm not correct, whoever your CM, that's your construction company, like that. But we had Tate, we had Ball and Shell.
And the district can have.
It took a long time to do it. It was a 6-month process.
The district can have more than one construction manager on record.
Okay.
Right? I mean, so just because if what you're saying is, I mean, there's no, Nabholz doesn't necessarily get replaced as your construction manager, right? Unless that's what you want to do. Who's going to be, I guess the question is, if Nabholz isn't going to be the construction manager for this project, then that would mean we need to go through the process of identifying a construction manager. To your point, there is a process to do that. And you're also asking, like Gary, you want idea on like the fees and that is all going to play into that process, right? And so that's where.
When they give you a presentation, they will tell you what their fee will be. And that is
Why
part of your.
don't we want to open it up for bids and once we get the bids, then we.
You mean for a
once-
construction manager?
Or
No,
not
for the entire hard bid.
The hard bid, I think
So
is what you're
basically-
talking about, yeah.
The drawback to that is there's not that many companies that can build this that are hard bidding anymore.
So like the Craighead County Courthouse that was just done, that was hard bid, the way the public project process when it had to be.
Ramson's got it.
Ramson's got it, but like Tate had been considering it and pulled out. Nabholz doesn't hard bid, like any of the ones that had the capacity for almost 2 years to have a superintendent there every day, because they're bigger, couldn't, like they just didn't, they don't do hard bids. And it was only a few of them that could actually do a project that size, which was a lot smaller than this. So
We ended up with, the Ramson's was the only one that bid on it.
yeah, Ramson's was the only bidder.
And that goes to that timing thing, when you guys bid it out, you might get 3 or 4. But at that moment in time, only Ramson's bid on it. I don't know if Ramson's knew they were the only one bidding on on it, but that, they can, maybe, if they do know it, they're gonna raise their price, you know, so even though you're hard bidding it, you're not getting the best price.
I would be very uncomfortable hard bidding a brand new high school.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's-
And so,
we've done it before, it is a nightmare for
Well, you did it with
your office.
elementary school, right?
no, it was a construction
Nabholz
manager.
was the CM. Like I said, they bid it out, they just bid out sub-packages.
We
So
did.
they bid out
That's the science.
electrical,
That's the
plumbing,
first thing
mechanical,
we
they get a
used to
number
do.
for each one of those. They call them bid packages. So they got a number for the concrete, they got a number for the metal building, they got a number for the, brick masonry.
It's
So
really
where's like a
interesting
hard
how
bid, the
much the
GC
bid
may
on-
go to their trusted
For subs.
mason, yeah, to
But
get
that's what
that
I
one
think,
price.
I think that's why we were at $500,000 in our bathroom remodel, where we shouldn't be.
Yeah, it can
Because we
go,
rely
it
on
can
them to
go
get a
the
good
other
painter.
way.
And
So what's the
support-
difference of doing like Mr. Gary said they did before, and basically do the CM? I mean, that's kind of like they're bidding the job sort of, instead of just giving it to Nabholz, because I'm not comfortable with that. I mean, I'm like him, I mean, I'm just, you know, I'm not in construction like Chad is, but it seems like everything they've shot
Okay,
up compared to
so
the numbers we're
here's-
hearing are way inflated.
Here's the way I think it's pretty simple. Is Lance gonna be your construction manager, or is somebody else gonna be the construction manager? I don't have, are you gonna resign from the board?
You need me to.
I mean, that's, seriously, Chad, I mean, that's,
How cheap will you do
that's
it?
where we start talking about,
I
right?
don't
offered
think
to
that I
manage-
would ever agree to put that on you. Like, it's too big of a project, it's too much, there's too much behind it, we need a construction
Well, no,
manager
yeah.
to just, you not have anything to do with it.
So, okay, so now you're at, if that's the case, and I appreciate that, because that's where
Well,
I would be, right? So now, either Nabholz is gonna be the construction manager, because that's the board, the previous board defined.
Yeah.
Or somebody else is gonna be the construction manager. And if it's somebody else, then we have to go through the process of interviewing and awarding that,
Which is adding
designation.
time to our,
Well, I don't know that it impacts the
You
election.
could post
You
that
have
and
time
be
if you
doing
want
it
to.
before
At
the
the same
election, yeah.
You may not know before the
Because
August.
part of
But-
the interview,
No,
they're
no,
not
they're-
going to necessarily have an exact price, like they would just be interviewing to come, like, to run the project, and they'll all tell you they'll give you the best price, or their CM fee includes, you know, like a CM is involved before the bid, like giving you pricing and stuff, and some of them may say they'll give you, you know, more pricing like every month instead of 2 times, or like that's what they'll tell you in the interview.
And
that
so
sort of
what I'm
stuff.
doing, what I'm saying is, if I'm gonna go to, for example, Nabholz and ask them, like, give me the ballpark on what you think it's gonna cost, they're gonna give me a price, and if I'm gonna go to, you know, for example, Baldwin and Shell or Tate or anybody else, right? They're gonna want, do I even have the ability to get this project?
Well-
So that brings us back to, either yes, they do, because the board is interested in interviewing for those services, or no, they're not, and if, no, I'm not, because you're gonna, then why am I giving you a price? Don't call me, right? So that's
well,
kind
it's the
of
same way with Nabholz too, if we're not gonna use them, we need to quit using them. Like, as far as like going to ask these questions, because,
well, if they give the district the best deal, I mean, I hear what you're saying, right?
right, but they'll get the opportunity to say, this is what we
How do you know if they're
offer.
giving you the best deal if you don't talk to anybody else?
You don't, and but that's why I'm
That's
asking.
where I have a problem.
But
So that's why I'm
what we
asking
need
the
to back
question.
up,
Yeah.
because the
Do you-
last board said Nabholz
Well,
was who we used.
Remember the bathroom remodel? I said, can we redo this painting quote, because $44,000 to paint from here to that ceiling, all the way around the perimeter in 10 bathrooms is terrible, you know? And they said, yes, we can redo it. And I gave phone numbers to you, you gave them to Nabholz. Neither one of those guys, and they're reputable painters in town, they never got a phone call from Nabholz. And so therefore, we paid $44,000 to paint from here to there.
Because it wasn't their guys. That's
Yeah,
just that
and
simple.
they used
That's
the
how
guy
that
out of
business
Bryant,
works.
the only guy that bid, the original bid to do it. And that's just, I mean, you're talking 6 times the price it should have been, or more. I mean,
So I
guess, and I hear what you're saying, I don't like to pay a penny more than you. How do you think it would be any different with any other company?
well, they're not, we go to Jonesboro, a company out of Jonesboro or closer to us,
The Nabholz is, yeah, they've got, I don't think they have a Jonesboro branch. They got a Conway branch, they got a Bentonville branch, and they got a Little Rock branch. And those contractors are charging a lot higher than the Jonesboro contractor. If I get a concrete guy in Pocahontas, he's the cheapest concrete, but his quality might be a little issue. If I hire one in Jonesboro, he's a little better quality. If I get one in Little Rock, he's gonna be very expensive, but we'll do a really good job, you understand? And so, that's the thing, I mean, I'm fine with Jonesboro contractors, you know, and big contractors, and so I feel like.
I think the majority of them, if I remember right, I went to the bid opening.
Well, think about
Contractors from Jonesboro.
you know, well, think about houses, you know, houses in Pocahontas are $110 a square foot. Jonesboro, they're 130, Searcy, they're 180, Little Rock, they're 200. You see what I mean? Bentonville, they're 350. So why would we want to hire a contractor that's based in those higher priced areas where those contractors are used to
Yeah,
charge,
but
those subs are used to
they
charge.
get multiple bids for the same job.
Well, that's
They didn't
what
on
you
the bathroom
would,
remodel.
that's what you would hope, so that, so one of the
They'd have like 5
advantages.
bidders.
That's what you would hope on a CM job,
Yeah.
is that, like, and the contract has some control over that, but also not all the control, cause you would hope that, like, the CM's putting this out there for bid, and they contact everybody all over, you know, and they're like, we're hoping to get 5 bids for HVAC work, you know, and we're hoping to get at least 2 for paint. But then sometimes people fall through and a sub will say, yeah, we're bidding it, and they don't turn it in. And that CM doesn't open that bid till we're all sitting there, and they're like, well, so-and-so told us they were turning in a bid, they just didn't. Whereas a hard bid job, they might only go to their one person and not, like, because in a hard bid, the GC's just giving you one lump number, and so they may not have gotten 5 HVAC numbers to create that. They may have just gotten their favorite guys. CM is supposed to kind of, like, you would hope, get you the extra bids, but
But I guess,
sometimes
Well,
with work, like, some companies won't do, this big of a job. They won't have the time at the time y'all bid it out, and they won't put in a bid, and that sort of thing.
well, and I think if I remember correctly, the main reason that we unanimous vote by the board to accept them was because they were so big. They had all these assets that they could go to.
Well, so let's just
And
go
that
and
worked out
say,
very well.
let's just say we want a contract manager, and if we wanna open it up to other companies, we open it up to other companies, but agree that we are gonna have a contract manager for it. Cause I don't want any of this on you.
I didn't even think that was an option, but.
No, that's,
I'm not.
you don't.
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying, if it's Nabholz, that's
Well,
what we're using,
Todd-
and that's who we've done, but
A lot of the job you think you're gonna do is Todd's job, correct? I mean,
If you're talking about construction management, you either will have a construction manager or a general contractor, which some of those companies do both. My goal is to make his life as easy as possible, yes. But as far as like construction, you'll know Dr. Arbuckle won't be in charge of construction, and neither will I. But I'll be his agent. I'll be making sure, to my best ability, that the contractor's doing their job.
But all the money will flow through the school district, and it would cause a lot of work for the
They're
central
very
staff.
similar
It was
once
a
you're under
nightmare.
construction, like the way it operates, the GC will still run that project like a CM would. Like, as far as what you're seeing as how it operates, who's running things, a lot of it's the before the bid work that's different. Like, no one's involved but us and y'all before the bid, if it's hard bid.
When I don't know what the process is, and maybe it's being misinterpreted what I'm saying. I don't want Dr. Arbuckle to be the general contractor or the CM, but I'm also not comfortable just saying, here, Nabholz, do what you want to do, and we'll just have to pay the fee.
It sounds like you're wanting a construction manager so that, there's still somebody fulfilling that role, but just interview other people. Just in those interviews, it's going to be like, it's usually not super specific to your project because they don't necessarily have it that all. They're literally coming to you being like, hire us as a firm and we'll help you, or as a company, and we'll help you with this project, but they don't necessarily, Nabholz would know more ins and outs to the specific project than anyone else interviewing. So it's just like knowing that the interview itself, it's not like you may not be getting specific answers to questions on this project to pick the best one. You're just trusting that like what they say, the services they'll provide, they'll
It really
do.
could, if we had 5 different companies, if we had all the big ones, you could have flipped the coin. That's, all of them had a different spin, all
Corning's
of them are
using C.R.
incomplete, all of them.
Crawford, and they're
It's just
from, like the other
reputation,
side of the
and
state
Nabholz
too,
had the
yeah.
best reputation, they were,
But they chose them over like Nabholz, Baldwin and Shell. Hoxie interviewed Baldwin, Shell, Tate, Nabholz, all of the ones around here. Yeah, I mean, it's just so everyone kind of has a preference, like, you know, it's really who you feel comfortable, you trust when they're presenting that to you.
but Katie is right, that cannot give you specific answers.
Right.
And
So you're still.
But
just
we're
as-
asking for
You're just
specific.
as much in the dark after the meeting as
You
you
will
are.
be.
But I
You're
think
just
what
trusting.
his point is you're asking for specific answers and you're wanting him to go to Nabholz for these specific answers. But then there's some people who agree that we don't need to use Nabholz.
No, if we can hard bid, I think opening up competition in any business, I don't have one metal supplier, I have 3 metal suppliers. I don't have one lumber supplier, I have 7 lumber suppliers. You know, anytime I can compete a supplier against a supplier, my prices go down, and that's why I keep my prices low. Same way with bidding. You know, yes, there's gonna be a little hard from now until the point you've come up with a plan. But as soon as we put that in a bid packet, right, and you submit it to people to bid, from after that person is awarded the bid, then his job gets much easier because now he's got a general contractor who's gonna be in charge of the job.
But none of us
Yeah.
have the time to deal with that on a month, like a
Well-
weekly, monthly basis.
He's gonna be doing 99% of the work until that point,
yeah,
right?
you will, again, there's 2 different processes you're probably looking at here. The way you did it on the elementary school is you hired Nabholz, and they charge a fee for construction management.
Right.
And what the benefit to that is that they come on board earlier and they're involved in the project early on, and they can help with cost estimating, and they can help, let's say we've got some questions about a good way to build something, and it's a little bit, like, I've got my way, I've done it before, and maybe they're like, well, we've done it this way on another project and it saves some money. They might be able to bring some ideas to the table. So they're around earlier in the process. And then on bid day, as soon as I get the drawings done, I give them to Nabholz and they advertise. And they, on the elementary school, they solicited as many bids as they could get. They didn't just go to one
Yeah.
supplier, they did try and get more. You can't guarantee that people are gonna bid, but on a big job, the bigger the job, the more likely you are to get a decent number of bids on different things. And then as soon as they got the bids, those are called the bid packages. You know, they got numbers for each bid package. They add it all up, and that's the cost of the project. As soon as construction starts, Nabholz is there to manage all of the subs. And then, you know, they build the building and.
But if you take them out, which is, you're wanting to take them out,
Well,
right?
I wanted to open up for bids.
Right.
Wanted to
general
open up
contractor. The other-
Nabholz position for bids
General
or this
contractor.
general contractor's bid? Like,
Why can't you use?
So hit,
like-
let
so
him
that's-
go,
I'll-
let him
I'll-
go through the
I'll
difference.
tell you what
Let
the
him go
difference
through,
is.
yeah.
So that's construction management. A general contractor wouldn't be around until we take bids. So what would happen is I would put together the drawings, same as I do before. There's no contractor before that, which is fine. You can do that. I'll get the drawings done, and then we'll issue the drawings, we'll advertise in the newspaper, we'll issue drawings. And hopefully you get more than one bid. But let's say you got 3 different companies that are general contractors. They're all gonna give you one number for the whole project. They're gonna say, we can build it for $30 million. Another guy's gonna say, I can build it for $30,500,000. They'll give you a number. And then that company will start building the project, whichever one is the lowest, if you want to choose the lowest. Then they'll start building it. They will be in charge of all the construction, all the subs, just like the construction manager was on with the other method. The difference is you don't have them early on in the project, but you also don't have to pay them a fee. You don't pay a construction manager's fee. So general contracting can be lower if you get enough bids. The issue we've been having lately with hard bidding, especially big jobs, is we don't get very many people who can build something like this that are willing to bid on it as a general contractor. You get plenty of interest for CM because they have the fee. But for general contracting, I don't know how many people will get.
You get, if you let them know, Tate, Ramsden's, Baldwin Shell, and Navels is only 4 I know of. And now if we keep if we split them up into 2, you'd get more contractors if they just did that separate than that, you'd get a lot more contractors just want to do that and not that,
Sure.
But anyways, we may not want to do that,
Yeah.
But a little real world story here. I've been on the Truman Fire Station, and originally they got 2 bids because they didn't advertise big. They got a $4 million bid and a $5 million bid on I forgot 15,000 square foot building. They said that's twice as much what our budget was. So KIT ran an article that said, hey, Truman Fire Department may not be able to get built because they got these crazy bids. Well, I went and bid it, right? Because I'm like, heck, I can do it for dirt cheap. So I bid 1.2 million. They ended up, here's the thing, I put a lot of clauses in there that I didn't want to do. And they ended up having 15 contractors bid on it. I was there. And they ended up awarding it to somebody for 1.8 million, which was half the price, or way less than half of the original 2. So if they had not been smart about it, they would have taken that $4 million bid, but they couldn't afford it. They had to rebid it. But once KIT put out an article saying, hey, we didn't get any, then they got 15 bids. And the reason I didn't get awarded is because I basically put in there, I'm not using Central States kit, I'm doing my own metal. They had specs, how architects have specs. They said, you gotta use Central States art panel metal, which I make my own metal, so I don't wanna use the competitors. And I put all kinds of stuff in there. They had brand of fixtures. I put, no, I'm using my American made fixtures, and so on. So that was the thing, they didn't go with my $1.2 million bid. But
Now, I'm also going to remind, the other difference is, the way I remember the conversation that Don Mixon had with this board when we were talking about this the last time is, we lose the ability to choose anything other than the lowest bidder, right?
You don't,
Legally.
You can, well,
you have
we
to
can
prove
put
that
it
they're
in the
not a good
bid.
bid.
We can put it in the bid that you, as the owner, you can choose whichever bid you want. You're not obligated to choose the lowest bidder. If they know that going on in the bid date, then, there's nothing that says you have to choose a little bidder. You run into some problems though, because people complain, you might have somebody who threatens to have a lawyer get involved if they don't get selected. But they don't really have any, they're not gonna win in court, but they can still threaten you with that. But no, you don't have to choose the lowest bidder. We just generally do, because why wouldn't you?
And there's just more transparency to that overall number when you have the CM bid, because you're seeing the 5 people bidding paint or whatever package it is, HVAC, electrical, as opposed to just somebody telling me, well, the whole project's gonna cost 35 million, and you're like, okay, you could throw out all the bids and rebid that whole project. You could do that in a CM's thing too, except you would just say, well, we only got 1 bidder for paint, so we'll throw it out and just issue that 1 package, and I know how much that portion of the project is. Whereas it's like not as transparent. You don't know. It could be that, anybody bidding a hard bid could just be going to 1 person in each trade and not getting a competitive number. And then you get a courthouse, like the courthouse project where we only had 1 bid. So when he said 15 point whatever million, we're like, did you get the best price on every part of it all, or did you just go ask your buddies, or you're not as sure. You're just trusting.
One thing with the CM, this happened in project, and
We're not making decisions anyway.
they were in an electrical project out here, they were well into it, and they didn't show up for work, the contractor. They went bankrupt. What do you do? This construction manager, he's in charge of finding someone else. They actually went in and bailed out the company.
Yeah, I will say, here's one of the reasons I think a construction manager is a good idea on large projects is we have still, like, I don't know, what was it, 2 months ago? We were still working with Nabholz to make sure that there were issues that exist, that's, you know, still exist in the elementary school are dealt with. And they are, you know, what, we're 4 years out and they are still addressing issues and helping us address issues. I don't see
The
that.
general
with-
contractor would do the same thing. Because their reputation is on the line. Now, one thing about Nabholz, remember they had on there $27,000 for rough framing, rough carpentry on that bathroom remodel. I sent them several emails wondering, what is that, rough carpentry? Because there's no carpentry in this whole thing. And after a couple emails with them, they finally said, we're refunding you $27,000. You remember that? I mean, it wasn't until I got involved and said, hey, where's this number at? They had $27,000.
With any company though.
I just think the idea of it, I
Because
mean,
we've dealt
a
with
contract
Ramsey's,
manager, we're
we've
gonna
dealt
have to
with
have
Tate.
it, it's too big of a
Yeah.
project.
But I mean, it was just me wanting the actual number of where this $27,000 is.
But I think, and so I guess what I'm hearing you say is you're really interested in seeing what those exact numbers are. And what I'm hearing from the two of you is, in a general contractor position, you will not get that.
No, you're gonna get a lump sum, that's gonna be the dollar amount. You don't care what those general contract, or subs underneath that guy are bidding, because we know the whole project is gonna cost this right here, you know?
We can ask for that because they're gonna submit a pay app, just whether it's a general contractor or a CM, they'll have, their pay app will have it broken down.
Yeah.
And so I guess I guess I'm still seeing, you know, our dollar amount, like the budget, doesn't change, right? So, I mean, the budget is still, let's call it $35 million or $34 million or whatever that is. I don't know,
Well, I think you're right. I think it's, I
No,
agree,
there
I
is some
agree
control
with
there.
Chad. I like to see competition. I think that drives it,
Yeah.
gives you better value. I think in this situation, I think we're too far, there's a timeline here. If we have to go back and hire another CM, that's gonna take months to get that process done.
He said, we've got time, if you're willing to save $4 to $6 million, you should be willing to wait a few months. I mean, that's ridiculous that you
But
Well, I
want
we
mean,
to.
gotta
y'all
do
could,
it
y'all
way
could
too
just put out a request for like a RFQ, I guess, RFP, I guess, whichever one. Y'all could put that out tomorrow, advertise for 2 weeks, set the interview for a date 3 weeks from today, interview 5 companies on one night and pick one the next day and before you even call for an election in August, already have a new CM.
Well,
I mean,
that's
it
what we
doesn't
have
have
to
to
do.
be a long process. It's the same as like putting out a project in that there's a certain amount of time, a few weeks or whatever, you're required to advertise, and then you set the interview date, you set all of that stuff.
You're not even required to interview. You don't want to.
Are you, I was gonna say, I don't even know if this one would be
I just remember how we
required.
did it before.
You know, I'm just looking like, hey, I gave 2 painters phone numbers to Nabholz. They did not call. They say they did, but they didn't.
Yeah, so the issue, like, is
I
just
think
them,
on
how
that,
they
John,
function
like,
there, yeah.
That one probably didn't need to be a CM job.
Yeah.
That could have been hard bid. That one, I think the reason we use CM is when you get close to the summer and you're trying to get a project done, you're kind of taking a chance when you hard bid it, that, you're just looking, you want that management help. And so you are paying a premium, you're paying for their fee, but they're able to get that project done over the summer. Not that GC couldn't, that hard bids it. I think we were just nervous, you know, we're like, we don't have a lot of time here. Nabholz is telling us, we can get this done over the summer.
Well, I had 2 contractors tell me they would have bid around between $200,000 and $300,000 for that bathroom hall. They would have done a better job than Nabholz did. I mean, that epoxy was terrible. That should have never been done like that. And so, I mean, for
And
$200,000
but
savings.
because it was done as a, like, CM project, that's when you're able to see, like, that transparency as to how many people, how many numbers they got for painting. If it had been hard bid, we could have asked them and they could have told us anything, but they could have
For
told
sure,
us
yeah.
that, you know.
For
So, because it was done that way, that's when we had that transparency, and especially on you know, something like this big, you would hope for sure that you wouldn't have one bidder in any package, but you can pull that package and say, we're rebidding all paint. And just that though, because we want to see, and we're there at the same time as you opening the envelope to see that paint number, you know, and now
Well,
have it
apparently we didn't
include
redo
the
the
sub.
bid paint, you know, we didn't even open
Yeah,
it for bids
If
again.
I remember right, Nabholz had certain insurance requirements and that was like company
That's-
policies. That was unfortunate. You know, that's why a little job like that might have made more sense to just hard bid it.
That's the thing,
We probably
everybody
have
will
that
still
on a
have to
big
meet
job,
bond
'cause-
requirements and insurance requirements, and some of, on a huge job, some of the smaller companies will say they can't meet it, and then, you know, it's like, well, like the CM is gonna have the same requirements that are, you know, basic across the industry. So it does knock out, it'll, like on a bigger project, it might knock out some smaller subs, but, I mean, you're still, it sounds like the issue was with how Nabholz, like, offered how they performed their service there. And so I think that the way that, like, from how I'm hearing you describe the situation, I think you may still be happy with the CM bid, especially for like the way you can negotiate, control, like kind of all of those individual trade numbers, because it seems like you like are into, like you're paying attention to those numbers and not just the overall. So I think you may still like that process. It's just with somebody that's not Nabholz, so that we can trust, like, yeah, when you give them a number that they're gonna call it, you know, and not say they are, you know, just somebody that you feel you can trust better to then perform
Well,
that.
they have closer subs. You know, when you're dealing with somebody who's out at Little Rock that has to deal with those subs are used to charging more. If you have a company out of Jonesboro that's a CM, they're gonna get subs from Pocahontas. They may even already use some subs from Pocahontas. So I feel like we'll be better if we go closer to Pocahontas with our CM or our general contractor either way.
So I guess if you don't have to have an interview, I mean, yeah, y'all
I
could,
recommend interviewing. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
the only requirement you will have to do is advertise in the paper that you want to solicit, you know, proposals from CMs. And
Well,
you might get 5 and you.
Just in your meeting, Nabholz threw out 5.9 million for a baseball and softball complex. Tate did it in Imboden for $2.3 million. I mean, that's half the price.
Is Tate a contract manager?
They
Yes.
do everything they would
do
be.
pretty well.
So what you're saying, we
They
just
bid
need
on our
to
job.
talk to other contract
Yes.
managers.
Yeah, y'all could still do this process. It sounds like,
I don't wanna do it
this
without a contract
process
manager.
would work well. I really
No.
think you'd still like it for like how you can control those packages. It just, yeah, y'all need to, and you could put out that advertisement soliciting, you know, just like the responses from CMs, and then Nabholz may want to come interview, but you don't pick them. Like you may have, you know, yeah, through Tate, Ramson, C.R. Crawford, all bigger ones working in the area. You'll say you're soliciting this for a 78,000 square foot high school, and you may not get like Bailey, Corbett may not come because they'll say we don't have, you know, they're smaller and they don't usually have the ability, you know, to spare a person for a whole project
Clark.
to watch it, and then
Clark.
yeah, and so, and they may come, you know, I don't know, but at least the ones we see it, like on the huge, like whole new building projects, Tate and Ramson's and Nabholz, and you don't have to hire them, you know, if they still come, but
I think we need to give Nabholz the option. I mean,
Baldwin and Shell was another one, yeah.
and other ones too, if you wanna talk to other ones too. I just know that, I do know that Nabholz has 2 different people working for them that are alumni from our school. So it's a very personal issue
That
for
makes
them.
it a fair, that's like why you do the interview process, because you're not just going up to somebody else who stopped by the office to talk to you and saying, we want to hire you.
I mean, this project means a lot to them, so I think that we really need to.
And there's scoring guides out there, the state issues them, like, and so you can even say you selected one because you scored each one
Yeah.
based on the state's like recommendations, you know. So it's like that process is set
Well, I
out to
think
be
we all
super
agree, we do
fair.
need to stay with the CMs,
For sure,
correct?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But I don't
Just a
think we
matter
need
of-
to sell Nabholz short
No.
before we,
like some boards just lean towards, yeah, obviously, like, that's why all these companies are operating as CMs. Some boards lean, towards what in the interview, like what one person said versus another company's, and
To me,
It's what
I
you
think it
trust.
means a lot that they have people that would be working on this project that are alumni. And it's gonna mean
That's
something
my
to them.
Alright, so you-
But I mean, whether
if
we
you put
choose
that
them, it's
out
not to your.
there, I can almost guarantee any firm that comes in here to interview will bring somebody that has a connection.
And that's
I haven't
great.
sat in on a CM interview where they haven't pulled like somebody that, and this guy like lives here, but didn't graduate here, but lives here now, or
Right.
like they all want to work for y'all, so they'll tell you their connections. You'll find out some, but that gives Nabholz a fair shot and everything. It just gives you then other options so you can select someone else.
Okay,
Just
so I'm gonna say this, we've lost a quorum,
Yeah.
right? So at this point, I think we need to kind of draw everything to a close. We can continue this conversation, at the next meeting.
Will
but I
you
do
need a
think
vote on this in the next meeting?
Eventually, we will, yes, so.
It'd have to be the next meeting.
Well, we could hold a special meeting,
Okay.
Weekly.
so, to do that.